As the shadows of the ancient forest stretched long under the fading light, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, Damir Khan's men tightened the ropes around Dasun's struggling form. The heavy net of woven ropes and iron weights pinned him to the muddy ground, his breath coming in ragged gasps. A soldier leaned close, his voice a venomous whisper slicing through the gloom. Your brother Damir Khan no longer wishes to see your face, traitor. You will die here, Dasun, forgotten and broken. Halima's scream tore through the trees like a wounded animal. Leave him! Release him, you dogs! She lunged forward only to be shoved back by rough hands. The soldier laughed darkly, lifting an old bow into the firelight of their torches. Look, Dasun, this bow, do you remember it? The very one your father taught you to shoot with when you were but a boy dreaming of glory. Today, this same bow will end you. He looped the bowstring around Dasun's throat and pulled tight. The cord bit deep into flesh, choking off air. Dasun's eyes bulged, veins standing out on his forehead as he fought for breath. Halima's cries grew frantic. Dursun, no! Release him, you filthy beasts! The soldier twisted the string harder. Today, knowing your woman watches, take one last look at her before the darkness claims you. In the distance, Bursa's halls glowed with warm lamplight, far from the forest cruelty. Orhan Sahib stood over the newborn child, his strong hands gentle as he lifted the infant from the cradle. The boy's cries were soft, a new life entering a world already heavy with war. Mashallah, Orhan murmured, his voice filled with quiet reverence. May Allah raise him under the protection of his mother and father. Aladdin Sahib, the proud father, nodded solemnly. May you live long, brother. May you remain safe. Asporcha watched from the side, her face a mask of composed grace. Congratulations, Aladdin Sahib. Fatima leaned toward Gonja, the mother, concern softening her tone. Are you well? You must be exhausted. Gonja smiled weakly. He is healthy. That is all that matters now, Fatima. I am content. Orhan lifted the child higher, his eyes warm. Welcome, Kiza. Welcome, my nephew. Aladdin stepped closer, studying the boy's features. See how he looks? He carries my blood, yet there is something of his mother too. Fatima laughed softly. Brother, his brows and eyes are exactly like his aunt's. He is the image of Aladdin. The room filled with gentle voices claiming resemblance, a rare moment of light amid gathering storms. Yet tension simmered beneath the joy. Aspocha reached out to hold the child, only for Malhun Khatun to enter, her presence commanding. Mashallah, how beautiful he looks in your arms, Aspocha. May Allah bless you with your own soon. The baby first. Gonja took him back swiftly to give him to me. Not everyone can hold my son. Aspocha's eyes flashed with anger. Without a word, she turned and left the chamber, her footsteps echoing. Orhan's voice grew firm as he addressed Aladdin. I will not repeat this. Aspocha is my wife. To dishonor her is to dishonor me. He departed, leaving heavy silence. Aladdin turned to Gonja. What have you done? Deep in the forest, the bowstring tightened mercilessly. Dursun's vision blurred. Then came the thunder of hooves and the whistle of arrows. A band of warriors burst from the trees, led by a scarred captain. Their volley cut down Damir Khan's men in a storm of iron-tipped death. The soldiers fell, screaming, torches dropping to ignite dry leaves. Smoke rose in black columns as flames licked upward. The captain rushed to Dursun's side, cutting the cord. Dursun Sahib, we have come. Halima ran to him, tears streaming. Dursun, are you hurt? He coughed, clutching his bruised throat. I am alive, thanks to Allah. And you? I am well, praise be to him. The captain, Alabe, gripped Dursun's shoulder. Your life was in danger, but we have ended their threat. Dursun searched his face. You have betrayed my brother and father? Alabe's eyes burned with conviction. This is not betrayal. It is loyalty. I have seen the true path. Yake Shahanshah grows old and weak. He can no longer ride. Damir Khan has thrown his lot with the infidels. The cardinal and Shahanshah gather a new crusader army. They march under the cross. Dursun's face twisted in fury and sorrow. My brother, how could he shelter beneath the shadow of unbelievers? I pity him. Alabe nodded. Fear not. I will not follow those who ally with the cross. I stand with those who walk Allah's path. Hassan Yaqub and Saiful Sahib agree. Dursun clasped his hand. Your loyalty honors me. I will not fail you. Summon the elders. The time has come for the Karasi tribe to unite. We will stand shoulder to shoulder with Urhan Sahib for the sake of the Islamic world. As they rode away from the burning clearing, Halima rode beside him. The responsibility to guide Karasi onto the right path now rests on you. Dusan stared into the night. I tried to prevent this war, but it can no longer be stopped. Now it is either my death or my brother's. Far to the east, the fortress of Ijanik loomed under moonlight, its walls thick with torchlight. Inside, Shahanshah Mahmud and Damir Khan waited in the great hall. Neither that coward the sun nor the heedless Aran can stop us, Damir Khan declared. Not while the Pope's support is ours. The gates groaned open. A grand procession entered, the Pope's carriage rolling over a crimson carpet laid in honor. Patriarch Andreas stepped forward. Welcome, Cardinal. Ijanik shall become the dream of Christian unity made real. The Cardinal descended, his robe sweeping the stone. Above, Mahmud watched with cold eyes. You wish to conquer Ijanik once, Damir Khan. Do you believe this alliance will deliver it? Damir's smile was sharp. When Aran falls, we shall see who claims what. Mahmud's voice dropped to a whisper of pure hatred. I care nothing for Ijanik or my future anymore. Let Aran perish. Let the whole world burn if it must. Back in Bursa, the palace gardens lay quiet under starlight. Nilüfer moved like a shadow until Asporça emerged, fury radiating from her. Nilüfer approached. Because of your foolishness, the realness and children fatherless. Asporça's reply was fierce. I went only for my father. Would you have sat idle in my place? Their words clashed like hidden blades. You turned every situation to your advantage. You pushed too far, Nilüfer. What will you do? You cannot harm me. Would you wish us to become enemies? You married to save the realm, yet to save the realm, yet save nothing. Neither realm nor peace remains. You will leave Bursa. Asporcha's voice hardened. You will not decide my fate, Nilüfer. I go nowhere unless I choose it. I take orders from no one. Nilüfer's eyes narrowed. You are no longer the princess you once were. Forget your old power. Asporcha stood tall. You underestimate me. Do what you can. As Nilüfer departed, Asporcha whispered into the night, I am not leaving. I am not leaving. In the stables, Kasim and Suleiman worked, sweeping and carrying refuse. Orhan Sahib approached quietly. Suleiman muttered to Kasim, sweep here again. I will take this waste. Orhan's voice carried warmth and authority. You two have become skilled at this labor. Kasim straightened. Have you come to check if we shirk our duties, father? We have finished. Orhan gestured them closer. Calm. Men do not fear paying for their actions. Suleiman spoke bitterly. Even if we had to clean the entire city's filth, we would not accept her father. We wish he would leave. Orhan's tone sharpened. Suleiman, beware. Speak no such words again. You will treat Aspocha with respect. She is my wife and your mother. Kasim's pain spilled over. We have only one true mother, and she weeps because of Asporcha. Orhan stood silent, the weight of divided loyalties pressing upon him. Ivanos walked beside Fatima in the training grounds. Fatima, I say it is time I asked your brother for your hand. She shook her head. Not yet, not he speaks with you himself. Be patient, Ivanos. As they continued, they saw Asporcha practicing archery with deadly focus, her arrows striking true despite the turmoil in her heart. Fatima and Evernos approached, the tension in the air thick as coming battle. Yet the true storm gathered beyond the walls. Orhan Sahib stood upon the battlements of Bursa as scouts brought grave news. Messengers spoke of Cardinal's region swelling with Frankish knights and local converts, their banners bearing the cross. Damir Khan had opened supply routes to them, betraying blood for power. Yaqub Shahanshah, desperate and aging, sent envoys promising lands and titles to any who would turn against the house of Osman. Orhan's voice rang out to his assembled captains. Turhan, Burhan, Damir's former allies now turned, Abdul Rahman, Damir Boga, Mustafa, Altuddin Sahib, Zarkan, Kilal, and Jakata Sahib. They seek to encircle us, cut our roads, starve our people, but we shall turn their trap upon them. Torhan, take your riders and harass their supply trains in the northern passes, burn their wagons, let them taste fear in the dark. Turhan bowed his hand on his sword. By Allah's will, their arrows will never reach you, Orhan Sahib. I will lead the charge myself. Burhan Faladios, the fierce rival whose loyalty had been tested in blood, stepped forward. Let me strike at their heart. Yaqub grows reckless, his mind fractures under the weight of his own betrayals. The campaign began under cover of night. Forest blazed as Turhan's men ambushed caravans. Smoke rose high, visible for miles, a signal that the Osman forces struck deep. Horses screamed, steel clashed, and Crusader banners burned. Psychological whispers spread through enemy ranks, tales of Urhan's mercy to those who surrendered, but swift justice for traitors. Many wavered. In the heart of the conflict, near the foothills of Iznik, the lines met in open battle. Faladios led a daring charge, his sword flashing as he carved through ranks. There, across the smoke-filled field, he saw Yaqub Shahanshah himself, mounted but frail, surrounded by desperate guards. Face me, old man! Faladios roared. Your betrayals end today. Yaqub, eyes wide with fear and rage, spurred his horse forward despite his weakness. Their blades met in a furious duel. Steel sang. Faladios was faster, younger, driven by honor. Yaqub fought with the cunning of a cornered wolf, but his blows weakened. You serve a false dawn. Yaqub gasped. Faladios parried and countered. And you serve the cross while claiming the faith. Your fate is sealed. With a final powerful strike, Faladios disarmed the Shahanshah. Yaqub fell to his knees amid the chaos of burning tents and dying men. Smoke choked the air as flames consumed the enemy camp. Mercy, Yaqub whispered. Faladios stood over him. Justice belongs to Allah and Orhan Sahib. Yet, even as victory seemed near, scouts rode in with dire tidings. The Cardinal's main force had slipped through a hidden pass, threatening to encircle Bursa itself. Damir Khan's betrayal ran deeper than imagined. He had revealed secret routes. Orhan Sahib, bloodied but unbowed, gathered his inner circle as fires lit the horizon. Prepare the retreat to stronger ground, Orhan commanded, voice steady. We draw them in, cut their lines, and strike when they believe us broken. Allah is with the patient. Toran wiped blood from his blade. And what of Asporcha and the palace intrigues? Orhan's gaze hardened. They will be dealt with. Loyalty must be absolute. As the army began its calculated withdrawal under moonlight, a lone rider approached from the shadows, a messenger from Darsun. The Karasi tribes gathered. They ride to your banner, Uran Sahib. Hope flickered, yet in the distance, new fires bloomed. The Cardinal's forces pressed on, and whispers spoke of yet another betrayal stirring within Bursa's own walls. Nilüfer's schemes had not ended. Asporcha's resolve hardened into something dangerous. The war was far from over. The night deepened, and with it, the march toward an uncertain dawn continued, fate hanging by a thread of faith, steel, and unyielding will.
As the moon hung low over the blood-soaked foothills, Orhan Sahib rode at the head of his retreating columns, the thunder of hooves and the creak of wagon wheels filling the night air. Smoke from the burning enemy camp still rose behind them like a black pillar marking the grave of Yaqub's ambitions. Turhan galloped beside him, his armor dented, his sword still red with the day's toll. The Cardinal's main host has slipped the northern pass, Orhan Sahib. They move faster than we expected. Damir Khan's betrayal runs deep. He has sold our hidden trails for promises of power. Orhan's face remained carved from stone, his eyes reflecting the distant flames. Then we make their haste their undoing. Order the men to burn the bridges at the river crossing. Let the waters swell with debris. We draw them deeper into our lands where every forest and ridge becomes our ally. Supply lines will stretch thin. Hunger and fear will gnaw at their faith before our steel ever touches them. Orhan Faladios, riding close with a fresh wound across his cheek, nodded grimly. The duel with Yakid has broken their spirit. He kneels now in chains, his pride shattered. Yet the old wolf still spits venom, promising gold to any who turn their cloak. The column pressed on through the darkness, torchlight flickering like dying stars. Behind them, the chaos of the battlefield lingered, tents consumed by fire, horses running wild, wounded men crying out to indifferent skis. Psychological seeds had been sown, captured crusaders were released with messages of Orhan's justice. Lay down your arms and live under the protection of the true faith, the released men whispered to their comrades upon return. Doubt spread like plague through the enemy ranks. In the dim light of a war tent later that night, Orhan gathered his most trusted captains, Turhan Burhan Faladios, Abdul Rahman, Tamir Boga, Mustafa Altadin Saheb, Zarkan Kilal Al-Aliadin Saheb and Jakarta Saheb. Maps lay spread across a rough table illuminated by oil lamps. We cannot hold every fort, we yield ground to gain time. Turhan, take 500 riders and strike their supply trains again at dawn. Cut their grain wagons, burn the rest. Let them march on empty bellies. Turhan placed his fist over his heart. As you command, their arrows will never find you while I breathe. Burhan Faladios leaned forward, his voice low and fierce. Yakid Shahanshah begs for audience. He claims he can still turn the tide if spared. Orhan's eyes narrowed. Bring him, but know this, betrayal carries only one reward. They dragged Yakid forward, the once proud Shahanshah now hobbled, his fine robes torn and stained with mud and blood. His eyes darted with desperate cunning. Orhan Saheb, mercy, the cardinal uses me as a pawn. Spare my life and I will reveal every weakness in their lines. Burhan Faladios stood ready, hand on his hilt. Yakid looked at him with pure hatred. You dog who struck me down, your blade was swift but your heart is black. The tension exploded. Faladios drew his sword in a flash of steel. Speak with respect or do not speak at all, traitor. Yakid lunged forward despite his chains, grabbing a fallen dagger from a guard's belt in a final act of madness. The two clashed in the confined space of the tent, steel ringing against steel, sparks flying as lamps toppled and oil ignited on the ground. Fire spread rapidly across the rugs, smoke filling the air, choking the witnesses. Faladios fought with controlled fury, parrying Yakid's wild, hate-fueled strikes. Your time is finished, Faladios roared. Yakid gasped, the cross will bury you all. With a powerful twist, Faladios disarmed him again and drove his blade through Yakid's shoulder, pinning him to the ground as flames licked higher. Orhan raised his hand. Enough, take him alive. His suffering will serve as warning. Smoke billowed out of the tent as men rushed to contain the fire. Chaos reigned for precious minutes, shouts, running feet, horses panicking. In that moment of disorder, a hidden messenger slipped through the lines, carrying Yakid's last desperate plea toward Damir Khan's camp. Dawn broke with crimson light as the Osman forces completed their strategic withdrawal to higher ground near the ancient ridges. Forests provided cover, rivers became barriers. Orhan's mind worked like a master weaver, turning defense into invisible nooses. We starve them of water and forage, small raids by night, never full battle until they are weakened. Scouts reported the Cardinal's army slowing, their supply lines bleeding from Turhan's relentless strikes. Fear grew among the Frankish knights, ghost riders in the trees, arrows from nowhere, whispers that Allah himself fought beside Orhan. Meanwhile, in the shadowed halls of Bursa, the air grew thick with different battles. Asporça stood upon the high balcony overlooking the training fields, her bow still in hand from the previous day's practice. Nilüfer approached like a serpent in silk. The realm whispers, Asporça, they say you bring only division. The sons of Orhan weep for their true mother. Even the captains question your place. Asporça turned slowly, her voice cold steel. You speak of division while sharpening your own knife, Nilüfer. I remain because Orhan Saheb wishes it. My blood and my oath bind me here. Nilüfer smiled thinly. Oaths break when thrones tremble. If Orhan falls in this war you helped invite by your actions, what becomes of you? Their confrontation simmered, words like hidden arrows. Asporça stepped closer. If you move against me openly, you will find I am not so easily removed. The blood of rulers runs in my veins. Do not test what I am capable of when cornered. In the stables, Qasim and Suleiman worked in silence, their young faces marked by resentment. Fatima passed by with Evanos, who still waited for the right moment to speak of marriage. Patience, Fatima urged him softly. My brother's heart is heavy with war. Yet even here rumors spread, servants spoke of Asporça's growing isolation, of Malhan Khatun's quiet support, of Gonya and Aladdin's new child becoming a symbol of fragile hope. Dursun and Halima rode hard with the Karasi warriors, Alabay at their side. The hills echoed with the sound of hundreds of horsemen answering the call. We march to join Orhan Saheb, Dursun declared, his throat still bruised from the bowstring attempt on his life. The time for hesitation is past. The Islamic world needs unity against this new crusade. Halima rode beside him, her presence a quiet strength. Your brother Damia has chosen darkness, you have chosen light, Allah sees. Their arrival at Orhan's camp came as the sun climbed higher. Dursun dismounted and approached Orhan with respect, kneeling briefly. Orhan Saheb, the Karasi tribe stand with you. We bring 3,000 spears and hearts loyal to the faith. Orhan clasped his arm firmly. Your loyalty turns the tide, Dursun. Your brother's betrayal cuts deep, but blood does not blind justice. Together they studied the maps. We encircle their vanguard. Orhan will strike from the east. You, Dursun, will lead the western push, cut their retreat, force them into the open where our archers can reap them. Strategy unfolded over the following days with ruthless precision. Orhan's elite riders intercepted a massive supply column at dusk. Arrows rained like divine judgment. Wagons exploded into flames as pitch-soaked torches found their marks. Horses screamed, men died choking on smoke. For Orhan, for the faith, Orhan shouted as he led the final charge, his sword cleaving through desperate defenders. The victory yielded grain, weapons, and prisoners who spoke of growing despair in the cardinal's camp. Yet the enemy adapted. Damia Khan, consumed by hatred, convinced the cardinal to launch a night assault on a forward Osman position. Fire arrows lit the sky. Chaos erupted as tents burned and warriors clashed in the darkness. Orhan Faladios fought like a lion, his blade singing through the smoke-filled melee. Hold the line, he bellowed. They break before our resolve. In the heart of that fiery night, Damia Khan himself appeared on the field, leading a personal charge against his former allies. Across the burning ground, he locked eyes with Dursun. The brothers met in single combat amid the inferno, swords clashing with tragic fury. You chose the wrong side, brother, Damia screamed, his blows heavy with betrayal. Dursun parried, tears mixing with sweat. You sold your soul to the cross, look what you have become. Steel met steel, sparks flew. Around them, men fell, tents collapsed in flames, and smoke obscured the stars. Dursun gained the upper hand, disarming Damia with a powerful twist. He stood over his brother, sword raised. It did not have to end this way. But before the final blow could fall, a volley of enemy arrows forced Dursun to retreat. Damia escaped into the smoke, wounded but alive, his hatred now a blazing fire. As the night deepened and the battle's smoke drifted across the ridges, Orhan Saheb surveyed the field from a high outcrop. Victory had been costly, many good men lay dead, yet the cardinal's advance had been blunted. Scouts brought new reports, reinforcements from the Pope were delayed, their ships harassed by storms and hidden raids. Orhan approached, breathing heavily. The lines hold, but whispers reach us from Bursa. Nilüfer moves against Asporça. The palace itself may fracture while we fight here. Orhan's jaw tightened. Then we must end this campaign swiftly. One final push. We march on İznik itself at first light. We take the fight to their heart. Dursun joined them, bloodied but resolute. My brother lives, he will strike again. Orhan Faladios wiped his blade. Let him come, justice awaits. Yet as the army prepared for the decisive march, a lone rider arrived under cover of pre-dawn mist, bearing a sealed message from within Bursa. The seal was Asporça's. The words inside spoke of imminent danger, not from the enemy outside, but from poison and betrayal within the very walls of power. Nilüfer had allies in the shadows, and one of Orhan's own captains stood accused of secret dealings. Orhan crushed the message in his fist, his eyes turning toward the distant horizon where Bursa lay. The war on the field was reaching its climax, but the war at home threatened to unravel everything. As the first light touched the hills and the army began its march toward İznik, a new tension gripped every heart. One wrong move, one hidden blade, and the entire realm could crumble from within. The drums of war beat louder, smoke still rose from the previous night's fires, and in the distance, the banners of the cardinal fluttered defiantly, waiting for the final confrontation that would decide the fate of nations and the soul of a people. As the first pale light of dawn kissed the rugged ridges surrounding the Osman camp, Orhan Saheb sat upon his warhorse, his silhouette etched against the rising sun like a figure carved from the very mountains themselves. The air carried the heavy scent of smoke from the previous night's fires, ashes still drifting on the wind like dark memories of the clashes that had claimed so many souls. The army stretched out behind him in a vast, disciplined column, thousands of warriors, their banners fluttering with the crescent and star, their hearts heavy yet resolute. Orhan rode at his right hand, ever vigilant, his eyes scanning the treelands for any sign of ambush. Orhan Faladios followed close behind, his freshly bandaged wound a stark reminder of the brutal duel with Yaqid Shahanshah. Dursun, newly arrived with the Karasi riders, kept pace on the left, his face marked by the lingering bruises around his throat and the deeper wound of his brother's betrayal. Orhan's voice carried low and commanding as they began the long march toward İznik. This is no simple advance, my brothers. We move not as blind attackers but as hunters who know the land better than our prey. The cardinal's forces grow desperate. Their supply lines bleed from Orhan's raids. Hunger will weaken their swords before we ever meet them in full battle. We cut their water sources at the eastern forks. We burn the forage fields they rely upon. Let fear seep into their bones like winter frost. Orhan nodded, his grip tight on the reins. I will take 300 of my finest riders ahead, Orhan Sahib. We strike their outpost at midday when the sun blinds them, arrows from the shadows, no mercy for those who march under the cross against the faithful. Orhan Faladios added, his tone fierce with the fire of recent combat, and I shall lead the center push. Yakid's capture has broken their morale, but Damir Khan still breathes. His hatred fuels him like poison in the veins. We must draw him out and end this blood feud once and for all. The column moved with purpose through dense forests and rolling valleys, the sound of hooves and marching feet a constant rhythm beneath the calls of distant birds. Scouts returned hourly with reports, enemy movements spotted, villages evacuated to deny the Crusaders shelter and food. Psychological warfare had already begun in earnest. Captured soldiers, treated with measured mercy, were sent back with messages sewn into their garments. Orhan Sahib offers life to those who lay down arms. The cross leads only to fire and ruin. These whispers spread through the enemy ranks like unseen arrows, causing desertions under cover of night. Far behind, in the marble halls of Bursa, a different war unfolded in hushed tones and veiled glances. Asporça walked the long corridors of the palace, her steps measured yet filled with the quiet storm brewing within her. Nilüfer waited in the shaded garden courtyard, surrounded by loyal attendants, her expression one of calculated calm. The realm grows restless, Asporça, Nilüfer said as she approached. Whispers follow you like shadows. Orhan Sahib fights for survival on the frontier while division festers here at the heart. The sons still grieve. The captains question your influence. Asporça stopped, turning with eyes sharp as newly forged steel. You speak of division, Nilüfer, yet it is your tongue that sows it. I stand here by Orhan's side and by his will alone. My presence is not a threat to this house, but its continuation. If you move against me with poison or plots, know that I see every shadow you cast. Nilüfer's smile was thin and cold. You overestimate your strength. The blood of old rulers means little when the people hunger for stability. One word from me and the council may turn. You will leave Bursa before Orhan returns, if he returns. The tension between them crackled like dry kindling. Asporça stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Threaten me again and you will discover how fiercely a cornered lioness fights. I did not survive my father's fall to be undone by your schemes. As Nilüfer withdrew with a swirl of silk, Asporça remained, her hands clenched. In the distance, she could see young Qasim and Suleiman training with wooden swords under the watchful eye of Orhan Sahib. The boys' faces showed lingering resentment, their movements sharp with unspoken pain. Malhun Khatun joined Asporça shortly after, her presence a steadying force. You must be careful, my daughter. Nilüfer has ears in many places. Even now she speaks with certain captains who remain behind to guard the city. Asporça replied softly, I know, but I will not flee. This is my home now, for Orhan, for the future we must protect. Back on the march, the Osman army reached the outskirts of contested lands by late afternoon. The sun beat down mercilessly as they set up a temporary camp near a narrow river gorge. Orhan gathered his captains once more. Turhan, Burhan, Faladios, Dursun, Abdul Rahman, Tamir Boga, Mustafa Altadin Sahib, Zarkan, Kilil, Al-Aliadin Sahib and Jakarta Sahib around a large map laid upon flattened ground. Ijanik is their stronghold. We cannot take it by direct assault yet. First we encircle. Turhan, your riders will cut the southern road completely. No reinforcements reach them. Dursun, your Karasi warriors will hold the western ridges. Rain arrows upon any who try to break out. We starve them of hope itself. Dursun placed his hand upon the map. It shall be done, Orhan Sahib. My brother Damir has chosen his path. Though it pains me, justice must prevail. I will not hesitate when the moment comes. Orhan Faladios gripped his sword hilt. And if Yakid's remaining loyalists rally, I will face them personally. My blade still thirsts after our last encounter. As night fell once more, the real test began. Orhan led a daring night raid on a massive enemy supply convoy winding through a forested pass, the air filled with the thunder of hooves. Arrows whistled from hidden positions, striking down drivers and guards alike. Torches were thrown onto wagons laden with grain and weapons. Flames erupted violently, lighting the forest in hellish orange and red. Smoke billowed thick and black, choking the air and causing panic among the Crusader escorts. Men screamed as horses bolted, wagons overturned, and chaos swallowed the column. Orhan charged at the head, his sword flashing. For Orhan, for the faith, burn it all. The raid was devastating. By morning, the cardinal's forces faced critical shortages. Yet the enemy struck back with fury. Damir Khan, driven by rage and desperation, convinced the cardinal to launch a counterthrust toward the Osman forward positions. Under cover of pre-dawn mist, thousands advanced. The clash erupted near the riverbanks. Steel met steel, shouts and cries echoed across the water. Fire arrows arced through the sky, setting trees and tents ablaze. Smoke rolled across the battlefield like a living shroud, obscuring friend from foe. In the heart of this inferno, Burhan Faladios found himself facing a formidable foe, not Damia, but one of the cardinal's elite Frankish commanders, a towering knight whose armor bore the marks of many holy wars. Their duel became the focal point of the melee. Swords clashed with bone-jarring force. Faladios moved with the grace of a desert storm, parrying heavy blows and countering with lightning precision. "Your cross blinds you," Faladios shouted over the roar of battle. The knight roared back, "Your false prophet will fall this day." Sparks flew as blades locked. Around them, men fell, some pierced by arrows, others cut down in the smoke-filled confusion. Flames from burning brush spread rapidly, forcing warriors to fight while dodging fire. Faladios feinted left, then struck true, his blade finding a gap in the knight's armor. The man fell to his knees, blood mixing with the mud, but there was no time to savor victory. Dursun, fighting nearby, suddenly locked eyes with his brother Damir Khan across the burning field. The two charged toward each other through the chaos, horses pounding over bodies and debris. "Brother," Dursun cried as their blades met in a shower of sparks. "This madness ends today." Damir's face twisted with hatred and pain. "You betrayed our blood first. Orhan has poisoned your mind." Their combat was fierce and personal, swords singing a tragic song. Steel rang repeatedly. Dursun pressed forward with righteous fury, while Damir fought with the desperation of a man who had sold everything for power. Smoke swirled around them, flames crackling nearby as a wagon exploded in the distance, sending embers raining down. Dursun gained the advantage, disarming Damir with a powerful overhead strike that sent his brother's sword flying. He stood over him, chest heaving. "Yield, Damir, there is still time for redemption." Damir spat blood and defiance. "Never, the cardinal will crush you all." Before Dursun could respond, a wave of enemy reinforcements crashed into the line, forcing him back. Damir escaped once more into the smoke, wounded but unbroken in his treachery. The battle raged for hours. Orhan Sahib himself rode into the fray at the critical moment, his presence inspiring the men to hold firm. "Allah is with us," he shouted. "Stand strong and the enemy will break." Orhan intercepted countless arrows meant for his commander, his shield and speed saving Orhan time and again. By midday, the cardinal's forces retreated in disorder, leaving behind hundreds of dead and valuable supplies now in Osman hands. In the aftermath, as smoke still rose from the scorched earth and medics tended the wounded, Orhan gathered his captains in a hastily cleared clearing. The air was thick with the smell of burning wood and blood. "We have blunted their thrust, but Ejanic remains. We press on. Strategic patience will win this war. We cut every route. We turn their own fear against them." Dursun approached, his expression heavy. "My brother lives. He will strike again from the shadows." Orhan placed a hand on his shoulder. "His fate is written, as is ours. We fight not for vengeance, but for the future of our people." Messengers arrived from Bursa as the sun began to set, bringing Asporcha's urgent letter along with other reports. Orhan read it in silence, his face darkening. Nilüfer's schemes had deepened, allegations of secret meetings with disloyal captains, whispers of poison in the household stores. Asporcha warned of imminent danger to the young princes and the stability of the realm itself. Orhan turned to his inner circle. "The war outside these hills is mirrored by treachery within. We cannot ignore it, yet we must finish what we started here. One final push toward Ejanic. We march at first light." That night, as the army rested under watchful guards, small fires dotted the camp. Stories were shared in low voices of bravery, of loss, of faith. Halima, who had ridden with Dursun, tended to minor wounds and spoke words of comfort to the warriors. "Allah test the steadfast, our cause is just." In the palace far away, Asporcha stood vigil over the children, her resolve hardening like tempered steel. Nilüfer plotted in secret chambers, gathering allies who feared the changing tides. As the stars wheeled overhead and the distant call of wolves echoed through the valleys, Orhan Sahib stood alone on a rise overlooking the camp. The weight of command pressed upon him, brothers divided, wives in conflict, and empire hanging in the balance. Yet his faith remained unshaken. "The path is clear," he whispered to the night wind. "We march, we fight, we endure." Dawn broke with new urgency. The full army moved toward Ejanic's formidable walls, banners high. Orhan's scouts reported the cardinal reinforcing the fortress desperately. Damir Khan had been seen entering the gates, his presence a dark promise of further betrayal. Orhan Faladios sharpened his blade with grim determination. Dursun prayed for strength to face his brother one last time. But as the vanguard crested the final ridge and Ejanic came into view, its towers gleaming under the morning sun, a shocking sight awaited. New banners flew alongside the cardinal's cross. Reinforcements had arrived overnight, larger than anticipated. And among them, a figure emerged on the walls, Damir Khan, standing beside the cardinal himself, raising a captured Osman standard in defiance. Worse still, a lone rider galloped into Orhan's lines, bloodied and exhausted. He carried devastating news from Bursa. Asporcha has been taken. Nilüfer's men struck at midnight. The palace is in turmoil. Orhan's hand tightened on his sword as the winds shifted and dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The dual wars on the field and at home had collided. Ihanek loomed ahead like a fortress of fate itself, while behind, the heart of his realm bled from within. The final confrontation approached, and with it, the destiny of nations hung by the thinnest thread of loyalty, honor, and unyielding will. The drums began to beat once more, signaling the march into destiny, as smoke from distant signal fires rose like warnings from the gods of war. As the morning sun climbed higher over the jagged ridges, casting long golden rays across the valley floor, Orhan Sahib reined in his warhorse atop the final crest, his eyes narrowing at the formidable sight of Ihanek fortress rising before them like a stone giant defying the heavens. The walls stood thick and ancient, crowned with banners bearing both the cross of the cardinal and the treacherous emblems of Damir Khan's broken oath. Smoke curled lazily from signal fires along the battlements, a warning to all who approached. The air carried the distant clamor of armor and shouted commands, the enemy preparing for the siege they knew was coming. Behind Orhan stretched the vast Osman host, thousands of warriors hardened by recent battles, their faces marked by determination and the lingering shadows of loss. Orhan sat tall in the saddle to his right, ever the loyal shield, while Burhan Faladios gripped his reins with knuckles white, his fresh scars from Yakid's duel still raw. Dursun rode nearby, his expression a storm of sorrow and resolve, the bruises on his throat a constant reminder of his brother's cruelty. Orhan's voice rose steady and deep, carrying across the ranks like a call to prayer amid gathering thunder. Behold our enemy's lair. They think these walls will save them, but stone crumbles before faith and strategy. We do not rush blindly. Orhan, take your elite riders and encircle the eastern approaches. Cut every supply line from the coast. Burn the orchards and fields that feed them. Let hunger become our silent ally. Orhan bowed his head. By Allah's grace, no arrow shall reach you while I draw breath, Orhan Sahib. I will make their nights sleepless with raids and whispers of doom. Burhan Faladios leaned forward, his fierce eyes burning. Let me lead the vanguard against their outer defenses. The cardinal grows desperate, and Damir Khan's presence on those walls is a poison I long to purge. Yakid's fall taught them nothing. They still believe betrayal brings victory. Dursun spoke then, his voice heavy with the weight of blood ties. My brother stands with them. Though it tears my soul, I will face him. The Karasi warriors will hold the western ridges, raining arrows upon any who dare sally forth. We starve them of hope itself. The army moved with calculated precision, spreading out to form a great crescent around Ihanek. Scouts slipped through the underbrush like ghosts, mapping weak points in the defenses. Psychological warfare intensified as the day wore on. Captured enemy scouts were released with messages carved into wooden tablets. Orhan Sahib offers mercy to those who repent. The cross leads only to fire and eternal regret. These words spread through the fortress like invisible arrows, sowing doubt among the Frankish knights and local Levites who had joined for promises of glory and plunder. Desertions began under cover of dusk, small groups slipping over the walls, only to be met by Osman patrols who treated them with measured justice, feeding them and sending them onward with tales of Orhan's honor. As night deepened, the true storm broke. Orhan's riders struck hard at a supply caravan attempting to reach the fortress under darkness. Hooves thundered through the narrow passes. Arrows whistled from hidden positions, striking down drivers and guards in a deadly rain. Torches flew through the air, igniting wagons loaded with grain and oil. Flames erupted with ferocious hunger, lighting the forest in a hellish glow. Smoke rose thick and black, choking the night and causing horses to rear in panic. Men screamed as steel met flesh. Orhan charged at the forefront, his sword flashing like divine lightning. For Orhan Sahib, for the faith, leave nothing for the enemy. The raid yielded precious supplies now turned against their former owners, grain that would feed the Osman host, weapons that would arm the faithful. Yet the cardinal answered with fury. Drums rolled from within Ihanek as gates creaked open. A sally force poured out under torchlight, led by Damir Khan himself, his armor gleaming with captured Osman insignia. The clash erupted near the riverbanks at the base of the fortress. Steel sang against steel. Fire arrows arced across the sky like falling stars, setting brush and tents ablaze. Chaos swallowed the battlefield as smoke rolled thick across the ground, turning night into a blinding shroud where friend and foe collided in desperate struggles. In the heart of this inferno, Burhan Faladios found his moment. Across the smoke-choked field, he spotted a towering figure, one of the cardinal's elite commanders, a battle-hardened Frank who had vowed to plant the cross upon Bursa's minarets. Their horses met in a thunderous collision. Swords clashed with bone-shaking force. Faladios fought with the precision of a desert predator, parrying heavy blows and countering with swift, lethal strikes. Your holy war is built on lies and betrayal. Faladios roared over the din. The night bellowed back, heathen dog, your false god will watch you die. Sparks flew as blades locked and twisted. Around them, warriors fell, some pierced by stray arrows, others cut down amid the swirling smoke and spreading flames that consumed dry grass and overturned wagons. Faladios feinted left, then drove forward with relentless power. His sword found a gap in the knight's armor, sending the man crashing to the bloodied earth, but there was no respite. From the chaos emerged Damir Khan, charging straight toward his brother Dursun. The two locked eyes across the fiery melee, their horses pounding over fallen bodies and debris. "Brother," Dursun cried as their blades met in a shower of sparks that lit the smoke around them. "This madness ends tonight. Repent and return to the path of honor." Damir's face twisted with years of resentment and desperation. "You betrayed our blood when you chose Orhan. The cardinal offers true power, not empty prayers." Their combat was raw and tragic, swords clashing repeatedly in a deadly dance. Steel rang like funeral bells. Dursun pressed with righteous fury tempered by sorrow, while Damir fought with the wild strength of a man who had burned every bridge behind him. Smoke swirled thicker as nearby tents collapsed in flames, embers raining down like judgment from above. Dursun gained the upper hand, disarming Damir with a powerful twist that sent his brother's sword spinning into the mud. He stood over him, chest heaving, sword raised. "Yield, Damir. Allah is merciful to those who turn back." Damir spat blood, his eyes blazing with unquenched hatred. "Mercy, I will see your head on a spike before this is over." Before the final blow could fall, a fresh wave of Crusader reinforcements crashed into the line, forcing Dursun to defend against multiple attackers. Damir scrambled away into the choking smoke, wounded yet alive, his curses echoing behind him. Orhan Sahib himself rode into the thick of battle at the critical hour, his presence igniting fresh courage in his men. "Stand firm, sons of the faith. Allah watches over the patient and the just." Orhan remained ever at his side, intercepting arrows with masterful skill, his shield raised and sword ready. The fighting raged for long, grueling hours until the cardinal's forces, bloodied and low on morale, retreated behind Ijanik's walls. The dawn light revealed a field littered with the fallen, smoke still rising from smoldering ruins, the ground churned to mud by boots and hooves. In the quiet aftermath, Orhan gathered his captains in a cleared space near the siege lines. The air smelled of ash and blood. Maps were unrolled across a makeshift table. "We have them contained. Now we tighten the noose. Altadin Sahib and Zarkan fortify the northern blockade. Kilal and Jakarta Sahib ensure no messages leave the fortress. Abdul Rahman and Tamir Boga lead teams to poison their outer wells with calculated care, enough to weaken, not slaughter the innocent trapped within. Mustafa and Al-Aliaddin Sahib prepare the siege engines. We will batter their gates while starving their spirit." Dursun approached, his armor dented and stained. "My brother still lives. His hatred runs deeper than I feared." Orhan placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Blood ties test us all, Dursun. Your loyalty here honors your father's true legacy. We fight not for vengeance, but for the soul of our people and the future of Islam in these lands." Orhan Faladios cleaned his blade with deliberate strokes. The duel with that Frankish dog showed their weakness. They rely on numbers and zeal, but both fail against true strategy. Yet as the sun climbed, a bloodied rider galloped into the camp, collapsing at Orhan's feet. "Orhan Sahib, grave news from Bursa. Nilüfer struck at midnight. Asporça has been seized. The palace is in chaos. She is held under guard, accused of treason against the realm. Young Qasim and Suleiman are caught between loyalties. Malhan Khatun tries to hold order, but Nilüfer's allies among the captains grow bold." Orhan's face darkened like a gathering storm. "So the war without mirrors the treachery within. Asporça, my wife." He turned to his inner circle, voice steady despite the fire in his eyes. "We cannot abandon this siege, yet we cannot lose the heart of our realm. Turhan, prepare a swift detachment. I will send trusted men back to Bursa under cover of night. But first we press Ijanik harder. Psychological pressure must break them before their walls do." The following days blurred into a relentless rhythm of siegecraft and shadow warfare. Osman forces tightened their encirclement, cutting every road and path. Small raids by night kept the defenders sleepless, arrows fired over walls with messages attached, tales of Damir Khan's coming abandonment, promises of safe passage for those who opened the gates. Inside Ijanik, tension mounted. The cardinal paced the high towers, his face gaunt with worry. Damir Khan argued fiercely with him in the great hall. "Orhan weakens, one decisive sally and we break their lines." The cardinal's reply was cold. "Your brother Dursun stands against you, your own blood turns the knife, we need more than promises." Moral confrontations echoed even within the fortress. Captured Osman spies brought before Damir spoke with quiet dignity. "You have sold your soul to the cross, Damir Khan. History will remember you as the traitor who invited infidels against his own." Damir struck one down in rage, but the words lingered, deepening the cracks in his alliance. Back in Bursa, the palace had become a cage of intrigue. Asporça stood confined in a guarded chamber, her eyes fierce despite chains of silk and watchful guards. Nilüfer visited under torchlight, her voice smooth as poisoned honey. "Your time here grows short, Asporça. The council turns against you. Orhan fights far away and his sons grow distant. Confess your schemes and perhaps mercy will find you." Asporça met her gaze without flinching. "You mistake strength for weakness, Nilüfer. I came to this house for alliance, not conquest. Your fear drives you to this betrayal. When Orhan returns, your plots will crumble like sand." Nilüfer laughed softly. Orhan may never return, the cardinal's forces swell, and even now certain captains in his army whisper of better rewards. Asporcha's heart tightened, but her resolve held. In another wing, young Qasim and Suleiman argued with their father's stewards. Asporcha is our father's wife, Suleiman said firmly. We cannot allow this dishonor, Qasim, torn, added, yet our true mother weeps because of her. The palace held its breath, waiting for news from the front. As the siege of İznik entered its critical phase, Orhan ordered a major assault on the outer walls. Siege engines groaned forward under cover of smoke screens, arrows darkened the sky, ladders rose against stone as warriors climbed under heavy fire. Chaos reigned as fire pots crashed into defenses, igniting wooden hoardings and sending flames leaping high. Smoke billowed across the battlefield once more, turning day to twilight. Orhan led a daring breach attempt, his sword carving a path forward. For the faith. In the smoke and fury, Dursun came face to face with Damir once again on a section of crumbling wall. Their blades met amid falling debris and burning pitch. "End this, brother," Dursun shouted. Damir fought back savagely. "You should have died in the forest." Their personal duel became legend in that moment, steel flashing, bodies twisting, the world reduced to two men bound by blood and divided by fate. Dursun pressed harder, his strikes fueled by sorrow. Damir weakened, a deep cut across his side slowing him. Yet before the end, reinforcements pulled Damir back behind inner gates. The outer defenses fell, but İznik's heart held. Orhan called a pause as night fell, the army consolidating gains. Fires lit the siege lines like a ring of judgment. Scouts brought word, the cardinal sought terms, but Damir urged continued resistance. Then under moonlight, another rider arrived from Bursa, this one more urgent. Asporça has escaped her chambers with help from within. She rides toward the frontier with a small guard, but Nilüfer's men pursue. The realm stands on the edge of civil strife. Orhan rose, his face a mask of thunderous resolve. The wars collide. We press the siege at dawn with everything we have. Turhan, Burhan, Dursun prepare for the final push. İznik must fall, but my wife and the heart of Bursa must be saved. As the captains dispersed to ready their men, dark clouds gathered overhead. In the distance, new fires appeared on the horizon, signals of approaching reinforcements or perhaps fresh betrayal. Damir Khan was seen upon the highest tower, raising a banner in defiance. The cardinal prayed loudly for divine intervention. And far away, Asporça rode through dangerous lands, her fate uncertain, while Nilüfer's schemes threatened to unravel the very foundation Orhan fought to protect. The night deepened, heavy with the scent of smoke and the promise of greater blood to come. The fate of empires, brothers, and loves hung by a single fragile thread, ready to snap with the first light of the coming dawn. The war was far from finished. It had only begun to reveal its true, merciless depth. As the heavy veil of night clung stubbornly to the ridges surrounding İznik, refusing to yield easily to the creeping fingers of dawn, Orhan Saheb stood motionless upon a rocky outcrop, his cloak whipping in the cold wind that carried the acrid scent of smoke from 100 smoldering fires below. The fortress loomed like a wounded beast in the distance, its once proud walls scarred by the previous day's assaults, yet still defiant under the fluttering banners of the cross and Damir Khan's treacherous emblems. The Osman army spread out in a vast, disciplined arc around it, thousands upon thousands of warriors resting uneasily beside their weapons, their faces illuminated by flickering campfires that painted long shadows across tents and armored horses. Orhan paced nearby, his elite swordsman sharpening blades with rhythmic scrapes that echoed like promises of coming violence. Orhan Falladio sat cleaning his sword with deliberate care, the fresh cuts from earlier clashes standing out red against his weathered skin. Dursun remained apart for a moment, staring toward the fortress where his brother waited, his hand unconsciously touching the fading bruises around his throat, the memory of the bowstring still raw in his soul. Abdul Rahman, Tamir Boga, Mustafa, Altadin Saheb, Zarkan, Kilal, Al-Aliaddin Saheb, and Jakarta Saheb gathered closer, their presence a council of steel and faith amid the gathering storm. Orhan turned slowly, his voice low yet carrying the weight of command that bound them all. The walls have tasted our fire, but their heart remains unbroken. We press the encirclement tighter this day. No mercy for their supplies, no rest for their sentries. Orhan, dispatch your swiftest riders to the eastern valleys, cut the last caravan routes from the sea. Burn every field within reach, poison the outer cisterns with just enough to weaken without slaughtering the civilians trapped inside. Let thirst and hunger become our unseen blades, turning their own desperation against them. Orhan placed his fist over his heart, eyes burning with loyalty. It shall be done, Orhan Saheb, their nights will fill with fear. I will lead the raids myself and ensure no arrow finds your back while breath remains in my body. Orhan Falladio's rose, gripping his hilt. Allow me the center assault on the weakened outer gate. The Frankish dogs grow restless. Their cardinal prays loudly, but his voice cracks with doubt. Damir Khan's presence poisons their unity. I will carve through their lines and bring that traitor to account. Dursun stepped forward then, his voice thick with conflicted honor. I will hold the western ridges with the Karasi warriors. My arrows will rain without cease upon any who dare sally forth. Though my brother stands behind those stones, blood does not blind me to justice. Allah will decide his fate through my hand if it must come to that." The captains murmured agreement as maps were unrolled once more under lantern light, strategies woven with meticulous care, encirclement patterns drawn to choke every road, supply cuts calculated to starve the fortress within days, retreats planned to lure enemy sallies into kill zones where archers and hidden cavalry could reap them like wheat. Psychological pressure mounted through the early hours as Osman archers fired messages tied to arrows over the walls, promises of safe conduct for those who opened the gates, warnings of the cardinal's inevitable abandonment, tales of how Damir Khan had already sold his soul for empty titles. Doubt spread like slow poison inside Ihanetle, visible in the hesitant movements of sentries upon the battlements. As the sun finally broke fully over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of blood and gold, the siege intensified. Orhan led a massive raid that thundered through the eastern passes, his riders descending like wolves upon a lagging supply train. Hooves pounded the earth. Arrows flew in deadly volleys, cutting down drivers and escorts before they could form ranks. Torches sailed through the air, igniting wagons heavy with grain, oil, and weapons. Flames roared to life with savage hunger, consuming wood and canvas in great bursts that sent black smoke billowing high into the sky, visible for miles as a signal of Osman dominance. Horses screamed in panic, men cried out as steel found flesh, and chaos reigned supreme amid the inferno. Orhan charged at the head, his sword a blur of righteous fury. For Orhan Sahib, for the one true faith, leave nothing standing that can sustain the enemy. The raid succeeded beyond measure, yielding carts of precious supplies now turned to feed the besieging host, while denying the fortress its lifeblood. Yet the cardinal, desperate and cornered, ordered a fierce counter-sally. Gates groaned open under midday sun, and hundreds poured forth in a desperate bid to break the encirclement. The battlefield erupted once more near the riverbanks and scorched fields. Steel clashed against steel in a deafening symphony. Fire arrows arced overhead like falling judgment, setting dry grass and abandoned tents ablaze. Thick smoke rolled across the ground in waves, blinding warriors and turning the clash into a nightmare of shadows and sudden death. Shouts of Allah Akbar met cries to the cross as men fell pierced by arrows or cut down in the choking haze. Orhan Faladios found himself locked in ferocious combat with another of the cardinal's elite champions, a massive knight whose armor bore the scars of distant holy wars. Their horses collided with earth-shaking force, blades met in sparks and ringing fury. Faladios moved with lethal grace born of years in the saddle and faith unyielding, parrying crushing overhead strikes and countering with swift thrusts that tested the knight's defenses. "Your cross is a lie built on betrayal and greed," Faladios roared through the smoke. The knight bellowed in return, voice strained, "Heathen, your empire will burn beneath our banners." The duel raged amid the chaos, embers falling like rain as nearby wagons exploded in bursts of flame and debris. Faladios feinted, twisted, and drove his blade home through a gap in the armor, sending the giant crashing down. But victory brought no pause. From the swirling smoke emerged Damir Khan once more, charging directly at Dursun's position on the western flank. The brothers met in a personal storm of steel and sorrow amid the burning field. "Brother, enough," Dursun shouted as their swords clashed in a shower of sparks that lit the surrounding haze. "Repent, return to the path before it is too late for your soul." Damir's face contorted with years of jealousy and desperation. "You chose Orhan over blood. The cardinal offers power you will never understand." Their blades sang a tragic song, striking and parrying with raw power. Smoke thickened around them as flames from a collapsed siege tower spread rapidly, forcing warriors on all sides to dodge falling timbers and leaping fire. Dursun pressed forward with controlled fury tempered by grief, his strikes precise. Damir fought wildly, driven by hatred, but a deep cut across his arm slowed him. Steel rang again and again until Dursun disarmed him with a powerful twist, standing over his fallen brother with sword raised high. "Yield, Damir, there is still mercy in Allah's eyes." Damir spat defiance through bloodied lips. "Never, I will drag you all down with me." A sudden rush of Crusader reinforcements crashed through, separating them once more. Damir retreated behind the lines, wounded but unbroken in his treachery, his curses lost in the roar of battle. Orhan Sahib himself rode into the melee at the decisive moment, his presence a beacon that rallied the faltering lines. "Hold, my brothers, stand firm in faith, the enemy breaks before the patient and the just." Orhan remained glued to his side, intercepting arrows with masterful skill, his body a living shield as he cut down threats with ruthless efficiency. The fighting dragged on through the long afternoon, grueling and merciless, until the cardinal's forces, bloodied, exhausted and demoralized, withdrew once more behind Ihanetle's battered walls. The field lay littered with the fallen, smoke rising in lazy columns from dozens of fires. The ground churned into a muddy graveyard of broken spears and discarded banners. In the weary aftermath, as medics tended the wounded and captains assessed the day's toll, Orhan convened another council beneath a large canopy. The air hung heavy with the smell of ash, sweat and blood. We have tightened the noose further. Their supplies dwindle, their morale frays. Altadin Sahib and Zarkan strengthen the northern blockade and ensure no bird flies from their towers with messages. Kilal and Jakarta Sahib intensify the arrow barrages with psychological messages. Abdul Rahman and Tamir Boga continue the careful spoiling of outer water sources. Mustafa and Al Aliaddin Sahib bring forward more siege engines. We batter them by day and haunt them by night. The captains voiced their oaths, each man bound by honor and shared vision of justice. Yet even as plans solidified, riders arrived from distant Bursa, their horses lathered and eyes wide with urgency. The news they bore struck like a fresh arrow. Asporça had escaped her confinement with aid from a few loyal servants within the palace, slipping out under cover of night with a small guard of faithful warriors. She now rode toward the frontier, seeking to reach Orhan's lines, but Nilüfer's agents pursued relentlessly through the forests and passes. Inside Bursa itself, the palace teetered on the brink, young Qasim and Suleiman torn between resentment and duty, Malhan Khartan struggling to maintain order while Nilüfer rallied captains who feared the changing winds of war. Whispers of possible civil strife echoed even here at the siege. Orhan's face hardened into a mask of thunder as he read the sealed letters. The shadows at home grow as dark as those before these walls. Asporça rides into danger for the sake of this house. We cannot abandon Ijanik, yet we cannot lose the soul of our realm. He turned to Turhan. Select a strong detachment of 200 riders. They ride tonight under cover of darkness to intercept and protect her. Burhan Faladios, you will remain here to press the siege. Dursun, your Karasi men will hold firm. As night deepened once more, the camp buzzed with preparations. Small fires dotted the siege lines like eyes watching the fortress. Stories circulated in low voices among the warriors of past glories, fallen comrades, and unyielding faith. Halima, ever at Dursun's side when possible, tended wounds and spoke quiet words of strength. Allah test the steadfast. Your path of loyalty honors more than blood ever could. Inside Ijanik, tension boiled over. The cardinal argued fiercely with Damir Khan in torchlit halls. Your brother stands against you. Your betrayals fracture our alliance. Damir slammed his fist upon the table. One more sally, we break them yet. Moral confrontations echoed as captured spies faced Damir, speaking with quiet dignity of honor lost and consequences written by fate. Far away in the winding forest roads, Asporça rode hard with her small escort, her face set with determination despite exhaustion. Nilüfer's pursuers closed in, their torches flickering through the trees like hunters on the scent. Clashes erupted in the darkness, brief, brutal skirmishes of steel and arrows where Asporça's guards fought fiercely to protect her. Hold them back, she commanded, her voice ringing with the blood of rulers. I will not be taken again. Back at the siege, as the first hints of false dawn touched the sky, Orhan ordered the greatest assault yet. Siege engines groaned forward under protective screens of smoke. Arrows blackened the heavens. Ladders and rams advanced amid covering fire. Chaos erupted anew as fire pots smashed against defenses, igniting wooden structures and sending flames leaping high into the air. Smoke swallowed the battlefield, turning the assault into a hellish vision of fire, steel, and shouting men. Turhan led one breach, Burhan another, their swords carving paths through desperate defenders. Dursun's arrows found mark after mark from the ridges. In the smoke-filled chaos near a crumbling section of wall, Dursun came face to face with Damir once more. Their blades met amid falling stones and burning pitch. This ends, brother, Dursun cried. Damir fought back with savage fury. You should have died long ago. Their duel intensified, steel flashing, bodies twisting desperately as the world burned around them. Dursun pressed with all his might, sorrow fueling every strike. Damir weakened visibly, blood flowing from multiple wounds. Yet before the killing blow, a massive counterpush from within the fortress forced the attackers back. Damir was pulled to safety, gasping curses. The outer bailey fell to Osman's hands, but the inner citadel held. Orhan called the pause as night threatened again, consolidating hard-won gains. Fires lit the lines in a great ring of judgment. Scouts reported the cardinal seeking secret terms while Damir urged total resistance. Then another exhausted rider burst into camp with devastating word. Asporça's escort had been ambushed. She fought free but now rode alone into uncertain territory, with Nilüfer's main force closing fast. Worse, rumors spoke of a captain in Orhan's own army secretly communicating with the enemy, a hidden betrayal threatening the entire siege from within. Orhan rose to his feet, gripping his sword as dark clouds gathered and distant thunder rolled. The hour of decision comes. We strike at first light with all our strength. Ijanik must fall, Asporça must be saved, and the traitor in our midst will be rooted out. The captains dispersed to rally their men, the night heavy with anticipation. Smoke from the day's fires still rose like prayers to the heavens. Damir Khan appeared upon the highest tower, raising a defiant banner. The cardinal's chants echoed faintly across the field, and in the forests, Asporça pressed on, her horse faltering as pursuers' horns sounded closer. The war without and the war within had fully collided. Fate hung suspended like a drawn bowstring, ready to release its arrow into the heart of empires. The drums began their low, ominous beat once more, signaling that whatever dawn brought, victory, betrayal, or shattering loss, the story of honor, justice, and unyielding will was far from its end. The night deepened, pregnant with smoke, steel, and the whispers of destiny yet to unfold. As the false dawn painted the eastern sky in faint streaks of crimson and gold, Orhan Sahib mounted his warhorse with deliberate grace, the weight of command settling upon his shoulders like the heavy mail of his ancestors. The vast Osman host stirred around the encircled fortress of Ijanik, thousands of warriors rising from uneasy slumber beside dying campfires, their armor catching the first light as they prepared for what many sensed would be the decisive day. Smoke from the previous night's blazes still hung low over the scarred landscape, a perpetual shroud that carried the mingled scents of charred wood, spilled blood, and the faint metallic tang of fear. Turhan stood ready at his commander's side, his elite swordsmen formed in disciplined ranks, eyes sharp and hands steady on reins and hilts. Orhan Faladios paced like a caged lion, his blade freshly honed, the scars from Yakid's duel and recent clashes marking him as a man forged in endless fire. Dursun sat tall upon his mount nearby, flanked by the rugged Karasi warriors, his face a mask of quiet torment as he gazed toward the fortress where his brother Damir Khan waited in defiant isolation. The full council of captains, Abdul Rahman, Tamir Boga, Mustafa Altadin Saheb, Zarkan Kilal, Al-Aliaddin Saheb, and Jakarta Saheb gathered close, their presence a living wall of loyalty and strategic wisdom amid the gathering tension. Orhan's voice rolled out across the assembled host, deep and resonant with the gravity of faith and fate. Today we tighten the circle of justice around these walls. The enemy's strength crumbles under hunger and doubt, but we strike with both steel and patience. Turhan, lead your riders deeper into the eastern valleys, sever the final threads of their supply lines from the coast, burn the hidden granaries they still guard. Let every breath they take remind them that Allah turns the tide against betrayers. Turhan bowed low, his oath fierce and immediate. As you command, Orhan Sahib, their darkness will know no rest. I shall intercept their arrows and deliver death from the shadows, protecting your life with my own. Orhan Faladios stepped forward, voice burning with righteous intensity. Grant me the honor of pressing the central breach. The cardinal's zeal falters. Damir Khan's presence sows discord among their ranks. I will carve a path through their lies and bring the weight of true honor upon them. Dursun nodded solemnly, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. The western ridges remain ours. My Karasi brothers and I will unleash arrows without pause. Though my blood calls from within those stones, honor and the path of faith demand I stand unyielding. The siege unfolded with masterful coordination as the sun climbed higher. Scouts slipped like ghosts through the underbrush, mapping every weakness while psychological operations continued unabated. Arrows flew over the walls tied with scrolls containing words of warning and mercy. Orhan Sahib grants life to those who repent and abandon the cross. Damir Khan's betrayal serves only his own ruin. These messages took root inside Ijanik, where weary defenders whispered among themselves, their loyalty fracturing under the weight of empty promises and growing thirst. Desertions increased by midday, small groups lowering ropes from the battlements only to be met by Osman patrols who offered food, water, and safe passage in exchange for information on the fortress's inner vulnerabilities. Turhan's raid struck with devastating precision in the early afternoon. His riders thundered through narrow passes like a divine storm, descending upon a desperate supply caravan attempting to reach Ijanik under heavy guard. Arrows rained in disciplined volleys, felling drivers and escorts before they could form defensive squares. Torches sailed in blazing arcs, igniting wagons laden with precious grain, salted meats, and barrels of oil. Flames exploded upward with ferocious appetite, consuming everything in great roaring pillars of fire that sent thick black smoke billowing high into the sky, visible from the fortress walls as a grim declaration of isolation. Horses panicked and bolted, men screamed as steel found flesh in the choking haze, and chaos swallowed the entire column. Turhan led from the front, his sword a flashing arc of justice. For Orhan Sahib, for the glory of the faith, burn their hopes to ash. The victory was complete, yielding vital supplies that now strengthened the besiegers while leaving the fortress weaker and more desperate than before. The cardinal responded with a furious counterattack, ordering the gates thrown wide in a last bid to shatter the encirclement. Hundreds of crusaders and Damir Khan's remaining loyalists poured forth under the harsh sun, their charge met by the unyielding steel of the Osman lines near the riverbanks and scorched outer fields. The battlefield transformed into a maelstrom of clashing steel, shouting warriors, and leaping flames as fire arrows arced overhead, setting grass and debris ablaze. Thick, acrid smoke rolled across the ground in heavy waves, reducing visibility to mere paces and turning every encounter into a nightmare of sudden blades and desperate cries. Allah is the greatest, roared the faithful as they held firm, meeting the cross-bearing charge with unrelenting resolve. In the heart of this inferno, Orhan Faladios met a formidable adversary, one of the cardinal's most decorated Frankish captains, a veteran whose armor gleamed with the spoils of past campaigns. Their horses collided with thunderous force. Swords rang out in a furious duet of power and skill. Faladios fought with the precision and ferocity of a man who had stared death in the face many times, parrying crushing blows and delivering lightning counters that tested every weakness. "Your holy war is built upon sand and betrayal," Faladios shouted through the smoke. The knight roared back, voice strained with exhaustion. "Your empire will fall, the cross demands it." Around them, warriors fell by the dozens, pierced by arrows, cut down in the blinding haze, or consumed by spreading flames that devoured tents and overturned carts in explosive bursts. Faladios fainted low, then struck true, driving his blade through a vulnerable joint and sending the knight crashing lifeless to the blood-soaked earth. Yet the true tragedy unfolded mere moments later. From the swirling smoke and chaos emerged Damir Khan, charging directly toward his brother with wild abandon. Dursun met him head-on, their blades clashing in a shower of sparks that momentarily lit the choking darkness around them. "Brother, this path leads only to damnation," Dursun cried, his voice cracking with sorrow even as he parried a savage overhead strike. "Turn back, honor and faith still wait for you." Damir's face twisted into a mask of pure hatred and desperation, years of resentment pouring forth with every blow. "You chose the wrong brother when you sided with Orhan. Power was offered to me and I took it." Their personal duel became the focal point of the melee, steel singing against steel in a tragic rhythm, bodies twisting and lunging amid falling embers and collapsing structures. Smoke thickened until it nearly blinded them, flames crackling hungrily as a nearby siege tower burned and toppled, sending debris raining down. Dursun pressed with righteous sorrow, his strikes measured yet powerful. Damir fought with reckless fury, but accumulating wounds slowed him, a deep gash across his thigh, another along his shield arm. With a final powerful twist, Dursun disarmed his brother, standing over him with sword poised. "Yield, Damir, Allah's mercy is greater than your pride." Damir gasped through bloodied teeth, "I would rather die than bow to you." A sudden surge of enemy reinforcements crashed through the lines, forcing Dursun to defend against multiple threats and allowing Damir to be dragged back behind the walls, wounded and cursing but still breathing defiance. Orhan Sahib rode through the thick of battle like a figure from legend, his presence inspiring fresh courage as he shouted, "Stand firm, warriors of the faith. Patience and justice will prevail. Allah sees the steadfast." Orhan remained an unbreakable shield at his side, intercepting arrows with uncanny skill and cutting down any who dared approach too closely. The fighting raged mercilessly through the long hours of the afternoon until the Cardinal's forces, decimated and broken in spirit, retreated once more behind Ijanik's battered inner defenses. The outer bailey now lay firmly in Osman hands, a hard-won victory marked by smouldering ruins and the groans of the wounded. In the weary council that followed under a hastily raised canopy, Orhan addressed his captains with renewed gravity. "The noose tightens, their water grows foul, their food scarce, their hearts divided. We press without relent, maintain the encirclement, intensify the night raids, prepare the final assault on the inner citadel at dawn." Yet even as plans solidified, exhausted riders arrived from the direction of Bursa, their horses near collapse. The news struck like a fresh blade. Asporça had evaded her pursuers through cunning and the sacrifice of loyal guards, but now rode nearly alone through dangerous territory, her small escort reduced to a handful. Nilüfer's main force hunted her relentlessly, closing the distance with every passing hour. Inside Bursa, the palace trembled on the edge of fracture, Qasim and Suleiman caught in painful loyalty struggles, Malhun Khatun working tirelessly to preserve order, while Nilüfer whispered promises of power to wavering captains. Orhan's jaw tightened as he absorbed the reports, his eyes reflecting the dual fires of war without and within. "Asporça risks everything for this house. We cannot abandon the siege, yet we will not lose the heart of our realm." He turned to Orhan. "Take 100 of your finest and ride tonight to find and protect her. The rest of us will deliver the final blow to Ijanik." As night fell once more, the camp hummed with purposeful activity. Small fires dotted the lines like watchful eyes. Warriors shared quiet stories of faith and endurance. Halima tended to Dursun's minor wounds, her presence a quiet anchor. "Your loyalty shines brighter than any brother's betrayal. Allah will reward the just." Deep inside Ijanik, the Cardinal and Damir Khan clashed in heated argument within torchlit chambers. "Your brother stands against you like an unbreakable wall," the Cardinal hissed. "Your betrayals weaken us all." Damir slammed his fist down. "One final sally at dawn, we break them or die trying." Moral reckonings echoed as captured Osman warriors faced their tormentors with quiet dignity, speaking of honor lost and the heavy price of allying with the cross. In the shadowed forests far from the siege, Asporça pushed her weary horse forward, her cloak torn and her resolve forged in fire. Distant horns of pursuers echoed through the trees, growing closer. A small clash erupted as her remaining guards turned to delay the hunters, steel ringing briefly before silence fell once more. She rode on alone, heart pounding, toward the distant glow of Orhan's campfires. As the deepest hours of night gave way to pre-dawn mist, Orhan ordered the ultimate assault. Siege engines groaned forward, arrows darkened the sky. Smoke screens rolled across the field as warriors charged the inner walls. Chaos erupted in its fullest fury, flames leaping high, steel clashing, men shouting invocations to the heavens. In the blinding smoke near a collapsing gate, Dursun once again found Damia in single combat. Their blades met with finality. "It ends here, brother." But as steel sang and the fortress trembled, a lone scout rode into Orhan's command post with shattering news. A trusted captain within the Osman ranks had been revealed as Nilüfer's secret ally, feeding information to the cardinal through hidden messengers. The betrayal struck at the heart of the siege itself. Orhan's eyes blazed with thunderous fury as the mist thickened and the sounds of battle reached a deafening crescendo. The wars without and within had fully merged into one merciless crucible, and the coming hours would decide not only the fate of Ijanik but the very soul of the realm. Smoke rose thicker than ever, and in the distance, Asporcha's horse faltered as Nilüfer's hunters appeared on the ridge behind her, closing in for the kill. The thread of destiny pulled taut, ready to snap. As the pre-dawn mist swirled thick and ghostly around the foot of Ijanik's battered inner walls, Orhan Sahib raised his hand like a prophet calling judgment upon the unfaithful, and the final cataclysmic assault began. The great siege engines groaned forward under the cover of rolling smoke screens, their massive arms swinging with thunderous force as boulders and fire pots smashed against ancient stone. Arrows darkened the sky in relentless waves, whistling like the breath of divine wrath. Warriors surged forward with ladders and rams, their voices rising in unified cries of Allahu Akbar that echoed across the valley like the roar of an approaching storm. The air grew heavy with the stench of burning pitch, spilled blood, and the acrid bite of fear as flames leapt high from the outer defenses now fully consumed. Smoke billowed in vast black columns, turning the battlefield into a hellish realm where visibility shrank to mere feet, and every shadow could hide death. Orhan led the eastern thrust with his elite riders, charging through the mist like avenging spectres. His sword flashed as he cut down desperate defenders who sallied forth in one last bid to break the noose. "Intercept their arrows, protect Orhan Sahib at all costs," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos as he personally blocked multiple shafts meant for his commander. Orhan Faladios carved a bloody path near the central gate, his blade singing a song of righteous fury as he felled Frankish knights and local traitors alike. "Your cross has led you to ruin," he bellowed at a dying opponent. "Betrayal bears bitter fruit." The entire field dissolved into pure pandemonium, men screaming, horses rearing in terror, fire spreading uncontrollably as oil barrels exploded in brilliant bursts that lit the mist with infernal orange glows. In the heart of this maelstrom, near a crumbling section of the inner wall where stones fell like rain, Dursun came face to face with his brother Damir Khan once more. The two locked eyes through the choking smoke, their horses circling amid falling debris and the cries of the dying. "It ends here, Damir," Dursun roared, spurring forward. Their blades clashed with a force that sent sparks flying into the haze, illuminating their faces twisted by blood, sorrow, and unyielding hatred. Steel rang against steel in a relentless, tragic rhythm. Dursun fought with the heavy heart of a man who had tried desperately to prevent this fratricidal nightmare. "You chose the cross over your own blood, over Allah's path. Repent before fate seals your soul forever," Damir countered with savage, desperate power, his wounds from previous clashes slowing him yet fueling a wild ferocity. "You betrayed me first when you knelt to Orhan. Power was mine for the taking, and I took it. The cardinal promised me a throne." Their duel became the eye of the storm, bodies twisting, horses rearing, blades seeking any opening as embers rained down from burning hoardings above. Smoke swirled so thick it nearly blinded them, forcing each man to fight by instinct and faith alone. Dursun pressed harder, his strikes measured by sorrowful resolve. Damir lunged wildly, landing a glancing cut across Dursun's shoulder that drew fresh blood, but the cost was high. Another deep gash opened along his own side. Around them, the battle raged without mercy. Abdul Rahman and Tamir Boga held the northern blockade firm, their archers pouring death upon any who tried to escape. Mustafa and Al-Aliadin Sahib directed fresh waves against the gates, their siege rams pounding like the heartbeat of an angry god. Zarkan and Kilil coordinated night raids that had bled the fortress dry, while Altadin Sahib and Jakarta Sahib ensured no messenger slipped through the tightening encirclement. Fire and chaos turned the tide repeatedly. A massive section of wall collapsed in a roar of stone and dust after a well-placed fire pot, allowing Osman warriors to pour through the breach like a flood. Shouts of victory mixed with screams of the fallen as smoke continued to choke the air, making every step treacherous. Orhan Sahib rode through the heart of it all, his presence a pillar of unshakable will. "Patience, my brothers, justice belongs to the steadfast. Allah sees every oath broken and every loyalty kept." His voice inspired fresh strength even as arrows whistled past. Orhan remained his living shield, galloping close and cutting down threats with expert precision. Yet in the midst of this glory, a scout fought his way through the melee to reach Orhan's side, bloodied and urgent. "Orhan Sahib. The traitor in our midst has been named, Captain Kulads. He has been feeding positions and plans to Damir Khan through hidden pigeons and bribed servants." Nilufar's hand reaches even here. Orhan's face darkened like gathering thunder. He signaled Burhan Faladios, who broke from the front lines and confronted Kulads near the command post. The confrontation was swift and brutal. Kulads drew his sword in panic. "You do not understand. The future belongs to the strong, not dreamers." Burhan's blade answered first, disarming the traitor in 3 powerful strokes before pinning him to the ground. "Betrayal is a poison that kills the betrayer slowest," Burhan growled. "Your fate will serve as warning to all who waver." Kulads was bound and dragged away as the assault continued without pause, his treachery now exposed and the lines secured once more. Far from the siege, in the dense forest that stretched between Ihanetle and Bursa, Asporça rode her exhausted horse with desperate speed. Branches whipped at her face and cloak as she pushed deeper into the wild terrain, her small remaining guard long since sacrificed to buy her time. Behind her, the horns of Nilufar's pursuers grew louder, their torches flickering through the trees like the eyes of hungry wolves. "She cannot escape forever," a harsh voice shouted in the distance. Asporça's heart pounded with the fire of survival and duty. "I will not be chained again," she whispered fiercely to the wind. "Not while Orhan fights for our future." A sudden ambush erupted as Nilufar's riders burst from a side path. Steel clashed in the darkness. Her last loyal man fought bravely, buying precious moments before falling. Asporça spurred her horse onward, arrows whistling past her as she weaved between ancient trunks. The chase was relentless, her mount beginning to falter under the strain. Back at Ihanetle, the inner citadel trembled under the ceaseless pressure. The cardinal stood upon the highest tower, his robes whipping in the wind, face gaunt with desperation as he watched his forces crumble. "Hold, the Pope's reinforcements must come," he cried, but his voice lacked conviction. Damir Khan, bloodied and limping from his duel with Dursun, argued beside him. "One more push, we break through their western flank." Yet even as he spoke, more defenders slipped away, drawn by Osman promises of mercy and the growing realization that their alliance with the cross had brought only ruin. Dursun, having momentarily lost sight of his brother in the chaos, pressed deeper into the breached walls with his Karasi warriors. "For the faith, for Orhan Sahib," he shouted, his shoulder wound stinging but his resolve unbroken. Halima's face flashed in his mind, her courage in the forest, her quiet strength. "I fight for a better path," he muttered as he cut down another foe. Smoke and fire continued to dominate the battlefield, turning day into an endless twilight of judgment. Another tower collapsed in a deafening crash, sending defenders screaming as they fell. Osman forces poured through, consolidating gains inside the outer courtyard of the inner keep. Orhan convened a rapid council amid the fighting, his captains gathering around him in a protected pocket. "The traitor is dealt with, now we end this. Tighten every line, cut their last water source completely, prepare for the final storming of the keep at dusk." The captains voiced their oaths with renewed fire, each man bound tighter by the exposure of betrayal and the scent of impending victory. Yet even in this moment, another rider arrived from the forests, gasping out news of Asporça's desperate flight. "She comes this way, Orhan Sahib, but Nilufar's hunters are close behind. She rides nearly alone." Orhan's eyes blazed with protective fury. "Turhan, take 50 riders and ride to her aid immediately. Bring my wife back safely. The rest of us will deliver Ihanetle its final hour." As Turhan galloped away with his detachment, the assault renewed with even greater ferocity. Orhan Faladios led the charge against the keep's main gate, his sword a whirlwind. Dursun fought toward the tower where Damir had last been seen, determined to end their blood feud. Inside the fortress, moral reckonings reached their peak. Captured defenders knelt before Orhan's advancing men, many begging for quarter and denouncing the cardinal's false promises. The cardinal himself began to waver, whispering of negotiation while Damir urged total resistance. "We die with honor or live as slaves," Damir shouted, but his voice grew hoarse with pain and doubt. As the sun dipped lower and the smoke thickened once more, Dursun finally cornered his brother on a high battlement overlooking the burning chaos below. Their blades met for what felt like the final time. "Look what your choices have wrought," Dursun cried, parrying a desperate lunge. "Brothers should stand together, not spill each other's blood." Damir attacked with everything left in him, tears of rage mixing with blood on his face. "I will never bow, never." Their duel raged atop the wall as flames licked upward from below and arrows continued to fly. Steel flashed, bodies strained. The world narrowed to 2 men bound by blood yet divided by fate. In the distance, Turhan's riders thundered through the forest, closing on Asporça's position as Nilufar's hunters appeared on the ridge, ready to strike. Back in Bursa, Nilüfer paced in growing panic, her schemes unraveling as reports arrived of Asporça's escape and the traitor's exposure. The night began to fall heavy over Ihanetle, pregnant with smoke, fire, and the final cries of battle. Orhan Sahib stood tall amid the ruins of the outer keep, watching as his forces pressed the last defenses. The war had reached its most dangerous hour, victory within reach on the field, yet Asporça's life hanging by a thread in the forests and the realm's internal wounds still bleeding. Fate's thread pulled ever tighter, ready to snap with the next clash of steel or the next whispered betrayal. The drums of war beat louder than ever, signaling that whatever the coming darkness brought, the epic struggle for honor, justice, and the soul of a people was hurtling toward its bloodiest and most defining moment yet. As the last rays of the setting sun bled across the smoke-choked valley like wounds upon the sky itself, Orhan Saheb stood upon the shattered outer keep of Ijanik, his silhouette framed against flames that devoured the fallen defenses, his cloak heavy with the dust of battle and the weight of destinies yet undecided. The air itself seemed to groan under the burden of war, thick with the stench of burning timber, spilled entrails, and the iron tang of blood that soaked the very earth beneath thousands of boots and hooves. The fortress, once a proud bastion of defiance, now trembled like a dying giant, its inner walls cracked and blackened, its towers leaning precariously as siege engines continued their relentless pounding in the gathering twilight. Warriors of the faith pressed forward in waves, their voices rising in fervent invocations to the Almighty. Ya Allah, grant us victory over the betrayers and the infidels who march beneath the false cross. Orhan had already ridden out like a storm unleashed, leading 50 of his most hardened riders into the shadowed forests toward Asporcha's desperate flight, their hooves thundering away into the mist as he vowed silently to bring his commander's wife back safely or die in the attempt. Back at the walls, Burhan Faladios fought like a man possessed by divine wrath, his blade carving bloody arcs through clusters of desperate Frankish knights who still clung to the inner gatehouse. Your cardinal's promises are ashes, he roared, his voice cutting through the chaos as steel met steel and another enemy fell choking on his own blood. Betrayal has led you here to fire and ruin. Around him, the battle surged in relentless waves. Abdul Rahman and Tamir Boga held the northern lines with iron discipline, their archers sending volley after volley into the breaches, while Mustafa and Al-Aliaddin Sahib directed fresh teams to drag massive rams forward, each thunderous impact shaking the ancient stones and sending dust and debris cascading down upon the defenders. High above the fray, upon a narrow battlement slick with blood and slick with the evening dew, Dursun and Damir Khan clashed in a duel that seemed torn from the pages of tragic fate itself. Their swords sang a sorrowful, relentless song beneath the rising moon, sparks exploding with every collision as smoke from the fires below swirled upward like the breath of angry spirits. Dursun pressed forward, his shoulder wound burning like fire, yet his resolve remained forged in the crucible of faith and lost brotherhood. Look around you, Damir, he shouted, parrying a vicious overhead strike that nearly cleaved his helmet. This is what your alliance with the cross has wrought, fire consuming your own people, brothers spilling each other's blood under foreign banners. Repent, there is still time to return to the path of honor before Allah's judgment falls fully upon you. Damir Khan, his face twisted by pain, hatred, and the madness of desperation, lunged again with a savage cry, his blade glancing off Dursun's guard and drawing a thin line of blood across his brother's arm. Honor, you speak of honor while kneeling before Orhan like a dog, Damir spat, his voice raw and breaking. The cardinal offered me power, real power, not empty prayers and endless marches. You chose the wrong side when you turned against your own blood. Their blades locked in a test of raw strength, faces inches apart, eyes burning with the shared history of childhood games now drowned in rivers of betrayal. Smoke thickened around them as a nearby wooden hoardings collapsed in flames, sending embers swirling like fiery snow. The ground beneath their feet trembled from the siege rams below. Dursun twisted free and countered with a powerful series of strikes, driving Damir back toward the battlement's edge. Our father taught us loyalty to faith above all. You have sold your soul for shadows, Damir roared back, launching a desperate counterattack that forced Dursun to leap aside as a section of the parapet crumbled away into the inferno below. The chaos of the greater battle only intensified their personal storm. Fire pots crashed against the inner towers, igniting fresh blazes that lit the night in hellish orange and red. Men screamed as they fell from the walls, their bodies swallowed by the smoke and flames. Zarkan and Killil led daring climbs up the southern face, their warriors planting the crescent banners upon captured sections, while Altaddin Saheb and Jakarta Saheb coordinated archer cover that reaped the enemy like harvest under a scythe. Psychological pressure had done its work. Many defenders inside the keep now openly questioned their leaders, some throwing down weapons and begging for quarter as Osman forces poured through multiple breaches. The cardinal's voice could be heard faintly from the highest tower, cracked and desperate as he prayed for deliverance that showed no sign of coming. Hold, my sons in Christ, reinforcements will arrive. But his words rang hollow against the roar of collapsing masonry and the victorious cries of the faithful. Orhan Saheb moved through the captured courtyard like a king of justice amid the ruins, his presence alone steadying the lines as fresh reports reached him. A captured enemy officer was brought forward, trembling. The cardinal seeks secret terms. He wishes to negotiate surrender if Damir Khan is handed over. Orhan's gaze remained unyielding. There will be no terms for those who invited the cross into our lands. Justice will be complete. Spread the word, those who lay down arms will be spared, but the architects of betrayal will face the full weight of their choices. The psychological warfare reached its peak as more defenders began streaming out of side gates under white cloths, their faces gaunt with hunger and disillusionment, whispering tales of how Damir Khan's hatred had poisoned the entire alliance. Yet even as victory seemed to draw near, the threads of fate pulled in opposing directions. In the deep forest, Asporcha's horse finally stumbled and fell near a rushing stream, throwing her to the mossy ground. She rose quickly, drawing a concealed dagger, her breathing ragged but her spirit unbroken. "I am no helpless princess," she whispered fiercely to the darkness. "I will reach Orhan or die trying." The sound of approaching hooves grew louder, Nilüfer's hunters closing in, their torches cutting through the trees like blades of malice. She slipped into the underbrush, heart pounding, every shadow a potential blade. Moments later, Turhan's detachment thundered into the same clearing, their horses lathered. "Asporcha cartoon," Turhan called out, his voice urgent. "Orhan Sahib sent us, stand and be recognized." But Nilüfer's riders burst forth at the same instant, leading to a sudden, violent skirmish in the moonlit woods, steel clashing, arrows whistling, horses screaming as the two forces collided in a desperate fight for the life of Orhan's wife. Back at Iznik, Dursun and Damir's duel reached its harrowing climax atop the battlement. Dursun feinted left and struck true, his blade slicing deep across Damir's chest plate, drawing a guttural cry of pain. Damir staggered, blood flowing freely, yet he refused to fall. With a final hate-fueled lunge, he grabbed Dursun's cloak and pulled him close, their faces locked in a brotherly embrace turned nightmare. "If I die, I take you with me," Damir gasped. They struggled at the very edge, the drop below filled with fire and chaos. Dursun twisted free at the last moment, shoving his brother back. Damir teetered, then fell from the battlement with a final curse, crashing into the burning debris below. Dursun leaned over the edge, chest heaving, tears mixing with sweat and blood. "May Allah have mercy on your soul, brother." Orhan witnessed the fall from afar and raised his sword high. "The traitor has met his end. Press forward, Iznik is ours." The men roared in triumph as the inner keep's gates buckled under the final assault. Orhan Faladios was the first through the breach, his blade claiming the cardinal's personal guard one by one. The cardinal himself was dragged forward shortly after, his robes torn, face pale with terror. "Mercy in the name of God," he whispered. Orhan looked down upon him with cold justice. "You brought war to these lands, now face its consequences." Yet even in this hour of triumph, a bloodied messenger fought his way to Orhan's side. "Orhan Sahib, grave tidings from Bursa. Nilüfer has rallied more captains. The palace stands on the brink of open revolt. Asporcha's fate remains unknown, though Turhan rides to her aid." At that same moment, from the forest direction, the distant sounds of fierce combat echoed, Turhan's men locked in desperate battle against superior numbers of Nilüfer's hunters. Asporcha fought alongside them now, her dagger flashing in the moonlight as she defended herself against a mounted attacker. Orhan's face hardened into a mask of unyielding resolve. "The war outside these walls has been won, but the war within our house still rages. Orhan Faladios, hold Iznik and secure the prisoners. The rest of us ride for Bursa at first light. We will end Nilüfer's schemes and bring my wife home." As the fires of Iznik continued to rage and the moon climbed higher, casting its cold light upon the field of victory and sorrow, dark clouds gathered once more on the horizon. Whispers spoke of yet another hidden betrayal among the captains, and Asporcha's skirmish in the forest grew fiercer, her survival hanging by the thinnest thread as Turhan fought like a lion to reach her side. The night deepened, heavy with the scent of smoke, victory, and the promise of fresh blood. The epic struggle for the realm was far from over. Brothers had fallen, fortresses had crumbled, yet the shadows of palace intrigue and personal vendettas threatened to undo everything Orhan had bled to achieve. Fate's arrow remained notched, ready to fly toward an uncertain dawn filled with fire, steel, and the unyielding cries of honor and faith. As the moon climbed higher into the smoke-veiled sky, casting its pale silver light upon the ruins of Iznik like a silent witness to both triumph and tragedy, Orhan Sahib walked slowly through the shattered inner courtyard, his boots crunching over broken stone and spent arrows that lay scattered like fallen leaves after a storm. The great fortress, once a symbol of defiance against the true faith, now stood humbled and broken, its towers leaning precariously, flames still licking at wooden structures that refused to die quietly. The air remained thick and heavy, saturated with the acrid smell of burning pitch, the metallic scent of blood, and the faint cries of the wounded that echoed through the night like distant prayers unanswered. Warriors moved among the debris, tending to their brothers, securing prisoners, and raising the crescent banners high upon the captured battlements where the cross had flown only hours before. Victory had come at a heavy price, yet it tasted bittersweet upon the tongue, for the shadow of greater threats still loomed beyond these walls. Orhan Faladios approached, his armor dented and streaked with the blood of many foes, his chest rising and falling heavily from the long hours of relentless combat. "The inner keep is ours, Orhan Sahib." The cardinal kneels in chains below, his proud words turned to dust. "Many of his Frankish knights have thrown down their weapons, begging for mercy in the name of the very cross they raised against us." Orhan nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the devastation. Show mercy to those who truly repent and lay down arms, but the architects of this invasion will face justice. Bring the cardinal before me. Moments later, the once mighty church leader was dragged forward, his fine robes torn and soiled, his face gaunt and pale beneath the torchlight. He fell to his knees, hands trembling. Mercy, Orhan Sahib, in the name of God, spare me. I was but a servant of higher powers. Orhan's voice cut through the night like tempered steel. You brought fire and betrayal to these lands. You allied with traitors who sold their own blood for empty promises. Your fate will be decided by the council, but know this: justice does not bend for those who invite war upon the innocent. Nearby, Dursun stood upon the battlement where his brother had fallen, staring down into the smouldering ruins below where Damir Khan's broken form lay amid the debris. Halima approached quietly, placing a gentle hand upon his arm, her presence a quiet light in the darkness. You did what honor demanded, my love. He chose his path long ago. May Allah forgive what can be forgiven. Dursun's voice was low and heavy with grief. He was my brother once. We rode together as boys beneath our father's banner. Now his blood stains these stones because of ambition and hate. I tried to turn him back, but fate had written otherwise. The moment hung heavy, a moral reckoning that weighed upon every soul who witnessed the brothers' tragic end. Orhan gathered his remaining captains amid the flickering torchlight of the captured Great Hall. Turhan's second in command standing in for the absent rider. Burhan Faladios, Abdul Rahman, Tamir Boga, Mustafa, Altadin Saheb, Zarkan, Kilal, Al-Aliadin Saheb and Jakarta Saheb. Maps stained with blood and soot were spread across a cracked stone table. Ijanik has fallen, but our work here is not yet complete. Burhan Faladios, you will remain with sufficient forces to secure the fortress, tend the wounded and prepare the prisoners for transport. Root out any remaining pockets of resistance. Ensure the water sources are cleansed and the people within these walls are fed so that they may see the mercy of true justice. Burhan bowed deeply. It shall be done, Orhan Saheb. No further betrayal will take root while I breathe. Orhan continued, his strategic mind already turning toward the larger picture. We cut their supply lines, starved their spirit, and turned their own fear against them. This victory will echo across the lands. Let word spread that those who march with the cross against the faithful will meet the same fate. Yet even as celebrations stirred quietly among the ranks, warriors sharing meager meals around small fires, recounting tales of bravery and fallen comrades, the greater storm brewed elsewhere. A scout burst into the hall, breathing hard. Orhan Saheb, fresh reports from the forests. Turhan has engaged Nilüfer's hunters. The fighting is fierce. Asporça fights beside them, refusing to hide while men bleed for her safety. Orhan's jaw tightened, a flash of protective fury crossing his features. Then we delay no longer. Prepare the main force. We ride for Bursa at first light. The palace intrigue must end before it devours the realm from within. In the deep, ancient forest, several hours' ride from Ijanik, the clash of steel and the thunder of hooves filled the moonlit clearings. Asporça stood with her back against an old oak, dagger in hand, her dress torn and her face streaked with dirt and determination. Turhan and his 50 riders had arrived like a divine intervention, slamming into Nilüfer's larger hunting party with devastating force. Protect Asporça cartoon at all costs. Turhan shouted, his sword ablur as he cut down 2 mounted attackers in quick succession. Arrows whistled through the branches, horses screamed and reared as blades found flesh. Nilüfer's captain, a hardened warrior loyal to her schemes, charged directly at Turhan. You serve a doomed house, he snarled. Their duel erupted in the center of the melee, steel ringing loudly, sparks flying as their horses circled. Turhan fought with elite precision, intercepting blows and delivering a powerful thrust that unseated his opponent. Loyalty to Orhan Saheb is never doomed, he replied coldly as the man fell. Asporça herself moved with surprising ferocity, slashing at a rider who tried to grab her, drawing blood across his thigh. I am no pawn to be taken, she cried, her voice carrying the fire of royal blood. Another attacker closed in on foot. She dodged and struck true, her dagger finding his side. Around her, Turhan's men fought like lions, their discipline and faith turning the numerical disadvantage into a grinding battle of attrition. Bodies fell among the roots and ferns. Torches dropped and ignited dry underbrush, adding fresh flames and smoke to the chaotic night. We must break through and reach Orhan's lines, Turhan called out, rallying his warriors as they slowly pushed Nilüfer's hunters back. Yet the enemy refused to yield easily, their orders clear: capture Asporça alive or ensure she never reached safety. Back in the marble halls of Bursa, far from the smoke of Ijanik and the forest skirmish, Nilüfer paced like a caged predator beneath ornate lamps. Her face, usually composed, now showed cracks of anxiety as messengers brought conflicting reports. Asporça has escaped again, with Turhan's riders protecting her. She turned sharply to her gathered allies among the captains and courtiers. Orhan grows stronger with every victory. If he returns triumphant from Ijanik, our position weakens. We must act faster, spread more rumors among the people. Tell them Asporça brings only division, turn the suns further against her. One captain, wavering, spoke cautiously. But Orhan's justice is known. If he discovers our involvement, Nilüfer's eyes flashed, then we ensure he never returns whole. There are still blades that can be bought and ears that listen in his own camp. Malhun Khatun, ever watchful from the shadows, overheard fragments of these whispers and moved swiftly through hidden passages to secure the young princes Qasim and Suleiman. "Stay close to me, my grandsons," she urged them quietly. "Dark currents move through these halls. Your father's return will bring clarity, but until then we must hold the heart of this house together." In the war tent near İznik as preparations for the march began, Orhan sat briefly with Dursun, sharing a moment of quiet reflection amid the distant crackle of dying fires. "Your brother's end weighs heavily upon you, Dursun. Such pain tests the strongest of men." Dursun stared into the flames of a small brazier. "I fought to save him until the last, but betrayal runs deeper than blood. Now I fight for the Karasi people and for the future you build, Orhan Sahib. Lead us and we will follow." Orhan placed a hand upon his shoulder. "Your loyalty honors us all. When we return to Bursa, we will heal what can be healed and cut away what cannot." As the first light of dawn touched the eastern ridges once more, the main Osman force began its march homeward, banners high, prisoners in tow, the captured cardinal riding bound upon a humble mule. The column stretched long through the valleys, a testament to hard-won victory. Scouts rode ahead and flanked the host, ever vigilant for ambushes. Orhan rode at the head, his mind turning over strategies for the coming confrontation in Bursa. How to root out Nilüfer's influence without fracturing the realm further, how to reunite his divided family, and how to secure the borders now that İznik had fallen. In the forests, Orhan's detachment finally broke through the last of Nilüfer's hunters, leaving many dead or fleeing into the trees. Asporça, exhausted but unbroken, mounted a spare horse behind Orhan. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not for me alone, but for Orhan and the house we serve." Orhan nodded grimly. "We ride hard to meet the main force. Danger still stalks these paths." As they galloped toward reunion, distant horns sounded once more. Another group of pursuers, perhaps reinforced, closing from the south. Meanwhile, within Bursa's walls, Nilüfer made her boldest move yet. Under the cover of morning prayers, her loyalists moved against key positions in the palace, attempting to seize control of the armory and the young princes. Shouts erupted in the corridors. Malhun Khatun stood firm with loyal guards. "You will not touch the blood of Osman while I live." Swords were drawn in the very heart of the realm. Qasim and Suleiman, torn yet courageous, stood beside her. "Our father will return," Qasim declared, "and he will bring justice." The dual fires of war, one on the field, raging within the palace, now raced toward collision. Orhan's column pressed onward, the smoke of İznik still visible on the horizon behind them like a fading scar. Asporça and Orhan rode to meet them, bloodied but alive. Dursun carried the weight of his brother's death while vowing renewed loyalty. And in Bursa, Nilüfer's final gamble unfolded in steel and shadow. The realm stood at the edge of a new precipice. Victory at İznik had bought time, but the true test of leadership, love, and unity awaited within the walls of home. As the sun rose higher and the winds shifted, carrying whispers of fresh conflict, Orhan Sahib's gaze remained fixed forward, his hand steady on the reins, knowing that the war was never truly over. It simply changed its face, demanding ever greater faith, wisdom, and unyielding will from those chosen to bear its burden. The march continued, heavy with destiny, as new fires kindled in the distance and the fate of empires hung once more by the thinnest, most fragile thread. As the golden light of a new morning spilled across the rolling valleys like divine mercy after a night of judgment, Orhan Sahib led the victorious column away from the smoking ruins of İznik, the long procession of warriors, captured banners, and bound prisoners stretching like a river of steel and faith across the ancient landscape. Behind them, the fallen fortress still smoldered, black pillars of smoke, rising high into the clear sky as a visible testament to the cost of betrayal and the triumph of those who walked the straight path. The cardinal rode bound upon a humble mule at the center of the host, his once proud head bowed, his fine robes now torn and stained with the dust of defeat, while Burhan Faladios remained behind with a strong garrison to secure the prize and begin the long work of restoring order to the conquered lands. The air carried the lingering scent of victory mixed with the heavy weariness of war, sweat, blood, and the faint sweetness of distant wildflowers pushing through scorched earth. Orhan rode at the head, his posture unbowed despite the many wounds he carried beneath his armor, his eyes fixed upon the distant horizon where Bursa waited like a troubled heart beating at the center of the realm. "We have broken the back of the invasion," he said to Dursun, who rode beside him, voice low yet carrying the quiet strength of command. "İznik has fallen. The cardinal's dreams lie in ashes, yet true victory awaits us only when the shadows within our own house are cleansed." Dursun nodded, his face still marked by the deep sorrow of his brother's fall. "Damir chose his end. I pray Allah grants him what mercy his soul may deserve. Now I ride with you, Orhan Sahib, for the Karasi people and for the greater cause. Let no further betrayal stain these lands." The column moved with disciplined purpose, scouts ranging far ahead and along the flanks to guard against any desperate remnants of the enemy. Psychological seeds planted during the siege continued to bear fruit. Even among the prisoners, many spoke openly now of how Damir Khan's hatred and the cardinal's ambition had led them to ruin, their words spreading like ripples that would weaken future threats before they could form. Supply lines, once cut by Turhan's raids, now flowed in reverse, feeding the returning host while the lands they passed through witnessed the mercy of the faithful. Villages spared, wells cleansed, and justice shown to those who had been caught between powers. Far ahead in the dense, shadowed forest that lay between the frontier and Bursa, the clash of desperate battle still echoed beneath the ancient canopy. Turhan fought like a lion unleashed, his sword a flashing arc of protection as Nilüfer's reinforced hunters pressed hard from multiple directions. "Hold the line for Asporça cartoon," he shouted, his voice booming through the trees as he parried a vicious thrust from a mounted attacker and drove his blade home with lethal precision. Arrows whistled through leaves, finding marks on both sides. Horses crashed through underbrush, snapping branches and churning the soft earth into mud. Flames had taken hold in several places where dropped torches had ignited dry brush, sending fresh smoke curling upward and adding to the chaos as warriors fought half-blinded by haze and shifting light. Asporça moved with fierce grace beside him, no longer a passive figure but a warrior in her own right. Her borrowed sword flashed as she defended against a foot soldier who lunged from the shadows. "I will not be taken back in chains," she cried, her voice ringing with royal fire. "Tell Nilüfer her schemes end here." She struck true, forcing her attacker to stumble back into the path of Turhan's riders. The skirmish surged and ebbed like a violent tide. Turhan's 50 men, though outnumbered, fought with the discipline and faith that had carried them through Ihanetle. One by one, Nilüfer's hunters fell or broke, their morale cracking under the realization that Asporça's protectors would rather die than yield her. Turhan dueled their captain in a fierce personal clash near a small clearing where sunlight pierced the canopy like blades of judgment. Steel rang repeatedly. "You serve a woman whose ambition blinds her to honor," Turhan growled. The captain sneered through gritted teeth. "And you serve a house already divided." Their blades locked, twisted, and Turhan delivered a powerful overhead strike that shattered the man's defense and sent him crashing to the forest floor. With the main threat broken, Turhan helped Asporça mount a fresh horse. "Orhan Sahib marches toward us even now," he said, breathing heavily but his eyes steady. "We ride to meet him. Stay close, cartoon, the forests still hide dangers." Asporça wiped blood from her cheek, her gaze fierce yet grateful. "I thank you, Turhan, not only for my life but for the stability of the realm. Nilüfer's poison runs deep, but together we will cut it out." They galloped onward, the small detachment now bloodied yet unbroken, racing to reunite with the main host as distant horns warned of yet more pursuers stirring in the deeper woods. In the grand halls of Bursa, the atmosphere had grown thick with tension and the metallic promise of coming violence. Nilüfer stood upon a high balcony overlooking the inner courtyard, her silk robes flowing as she watched her loyalists move into position under the guise of routine guard changes. "The time has come," she whispered to her closest allies. "Orhan returns victorious, but if we seize the palace now, we can dictate terms. Spread word that Asporça fled with enemies. Turn the people against her. Qasim and Suleiman must be brought under our influence before their father arrives." Malhan Khartoum, ever vigilant, had gathered loyal servants and positioned them near the young prince's chambers. "You will not succeed in this darkness," she said firmly to a group of wavering guards. "Orhan Sahib's justice is coming like the dawn. Stand with honor or face the consequences." Shouts suddenly erupted in the eastern wing. Nilüfer's men had moved against the armory, clashing with loyal defenders. Steel rang through marble corridors that had long known only the soft footsteps of courtiers. Qasim and Suleiman, standing beside Malhan, drew their own blades with youthful courage. "This is our father's house," Qasim declared, his voice cracking with both fear and resolve. "We will not let it fall to treachery." Swords clashed in the halls. A small fire broke out in one storage chamber as lamps were knocked over during the struggle, sending smoke drifting through the passages and adding panic to the confusion. Servants ran shouting warnings while Nilüfer's faction pressed harder, attempting to seize control of the main gates and isolate the palace from any returning loyalists. Orhan's column, sensing the growing urgency through scout reports, increased its pace. The warriors marched with renewed determination, their banners snapping in the wind. Dursun rode closer to Orhan, sharing quiet counsel. "The Karasi warriors stand ready to support you in whatever comes next. Internal betrayal wounds deeper than any foreign blade." Orhan's reply carried the weight of hard-won wisdom. "We have faced the cross and prevailed. Now we face the serpent within. Justice must be swift but measured. Families must heal, not shatter completely." As the sun climbed toward midday, the main host crested a final ridge and the distant spires of Bursa came into view. At the same moment, Turhan's detachment emerged from the forest edge, Asporça riding proudly beside him. The reunion was swift and emotional. Orhan dismounted and embraced Asporça with quiet intensity, his strong hands steadying her exhausted form. "You rode through fire for this house," he murmured. Your courage honors me more than any victory at Ihanetle. Asporcha's eyes shone with determination. Nilüfer moves even now. The palace burns with her ambition. We must ride hard, my husband. The realm teeters on the edge. The combined force pressed forward without rest, horns sounding to announce their approach. Inside Bursa, the fighting intensified. Nilüfer's men had seized part of the outer palace grounds, flames spreading from overturned braziers as chaos took hold. Malhan Khatun stood firm in the central hall with the prince's loyal guards forming a protective circle. "Hold," she commanded. "Orhan Sahib approaches, your treason will meet its end." Orhan's host reached the city gates like a righteous tide. The people, witnessing the returning banners and the bound cardinal among the prisoners, began to cheer, their voices swelling into a roar that shook the very walls. Nilüfer, watching from above, saw her plans crumbling. "No," she whispered, face pale. She ordered a final desperate push, sending her remaining loyalists to block the main approach and attempt to capture the princes as leverage. The clash at the palace gates became fierce and personal. Orhan led the charge himself, Turhan and Dursun at his flanks. Steel met steel in the wide courtyard as Nilüfer's faction made their last stand. Amid the chaos of shouting men and ringing blades, a final moral confrontation unfolded when one of Nilüfer's chief allies, a once trusted captain, faced Orhan directly. "You brought division by marrying her," the man shouted, pointing at Asporcha. "The realm suffers because of your choices." Orhan parried his attack with masterful control. "Division comes from those who place ambition above honor. You chose the wrong path, my old friend. Lay down your sword and live to see justice." The captain fought on desperately but fell to Turhan's swift intervention. As smoke rose from small fires within the palace grounds and the sounds of battle echoed through the sacred halls, Nilüfer attempted to flee toward a hidden passage, only to find Dursun and a group of Karasi warriors blocking her way. "Your schemes end here," Dursun said gravely. "The blood of betrayal has already claimed too many." Orhan entered the main hall like a storm of justice, his presence immediately quieting the remaining clashes. Malhan Khatun and the princes rushed to him. Qasim and Suleiman embraced their father, tears mixing with relief. Asporcha stood tall beside him, her hand resting upon his arm. The cardinal was brought forward once more, a living symbol of external defeat. Yet even as order began to return and loyalists secured the palace, a final messenger arrived, bloodied and urgent from the northern borders. "Orhan Sahib, new threats gather. Remnants of the cardinal's forces have united with disloyal tribes beyond the ridges. They march while we celebrate victory here." Orhan's hand tightened on his sword as he looked out over his reunited yet scarred family and realm. Smoke still drifted through the halls. The fires of internal conflict had been contained, but new flames kindled on the horizon. Dursun stood ready, Turhan unyielding, Asporcha resolute beside her husband. The night began to fall once more over Bursa, heavy with the scent of victory's smoke and the promise of wars yet to come. The struggle for the soul of the realm had entered a new and dangerous chapter. Honor had been tested, betrayals answered, yet fate refused to grant peace. As stars appeared above the minarets and distant drums sounded from the north, Orhan Sahib turned to his captains with unyielding will. "We rest briefly, then we march again. The defense of faith and house never truly ends." The wind carried his words like an oath across the awakening city, as fresh shadows gathered and the epic tale of justice, loyalty and unyielding resolve continued beneath the eternal gaze of the heavens. As the blackest night of the realm descended upon the narrow defiles of Demir Pass like the closing fist of destiny itself, Orhan Sahib raised his sword high amid the choking smoke and roaring flames, his voice thundering across the blood-soaked valley like the call of the final trumpet. "To me, all who stand for faith and honor, to me, we do not yield, we do not break. Allah is with the patient and justice rides upon our blades this night." The ground itself trembled beneath the weight of fresh thousands pouring into the pass, their armor gleaming dully through the inferno as the Pope's grand host revealed its true merciless scale. Fire arrows continued to arc overhead like falling stars of wrath, igniting siege wagons and dry brush alike, while thick black smoke rolled through the narrow corridors of stone, turning warriors into ghosts and every clash of steel into a dance with death. Turhan fought like a man possessed by divine fury at the eastern flank, his elite riders slamming repeatedly into the enemy's exposed side. "Cut them off," he roared, his sword flashing as he cleaved through a line of Frankish crossbowmen. "Burn their supplies until their god himself feels the hunger." Wagons exploded in brilliant bursts of flame and debris, sending sparks raining down upon the struggling masses and sowing panic through the papal ranks. Horses screamed and bolted, trampling their own riders as the psychological weight of endless raids finally cracked the invaders' spirit. Many began to waver, throwing down weapons and crying for mercy, only to be cut down by their own fanatical commanders who screamed blessings and threats in equal measure. Dursun held the high ridges with unyielding resolve, his Karasi warriors sending volley after volley of arrows into the smoke-choked valley below. "For the faith, for the house that stands unbroken," he shouted, his voice raw with the accumulated pain of his brother's betrayal and every battle since. Arrows whistled through the darkness like the breath of vengeance, finding marks in the throats and eyes of armored knights who had believed their heavy plate would make them invincible. The narrowness of the pass became their tomb. Horses could not maneuver, heavy armor became weights that dragged men down into the mud, and the flames that Orhan's strategy had invited turned the entire defile into a corridor of fire and judgment. In the heart of this apocalyptic chaos, Orhan Faladios carved a path of righteous destruction toward the center, his blade singing a song of vengeance for every fallen brother, every betrayed oath. Your cross has brought only death to these sacred lands, he bellowed as he met another papal champion in brutal single combat. The two warriors clashed atop a burning wagon, their horses long since fallen. Steel rang with bone-shaking force, sparks exploding into the smoke as Faladios fought with the accumulated wrath of every trial the realm had endured. The papal knight, a massive figure blessed by the Pope himself, swung with fanatical power. Heathen, we will purify this soil with your blood. Their duel raged as flames licked higher, the wagon beginning to collapse beneath them. Faladios feinted left, twisted with lethal grace, and drove his sword through a gap in the armor, ending the man's life as the structure gave way and sent both crashing into the inferno below. He rose from the flames like a demon of justice, bloodied but unbroken, rallying the center once more. Orhan himself fought at the very eye of the storm, his sword a blur of divine will as he met wave after wave of the enemy's elite guard. "Stand with me, my brothers," he cried, voice rising above the roar of battle. "This is not merely war, this is the defense of everything we hold sacred, for every prayer called from our minarets, for every child who deserves to grow under the protection of faith." His blade claimed life after life, each strike fueled by the memory of Damir Khan's fall, Nilüfer's poison, and the endless betrayals that had tested the realm to its core. Around him, warriors fought with renewed strength, inspired by the sight of their commander standing unbowed amid the fire and smoke. Yet the greatest threat came not from the front, but from the shadows within. A group of infiltrators, traitors who had slipped through the lines wearing stolen Osman colors, struck suddenly near Asporcha's position. She fought like a lioness cornered, her sword flashing with desperate skill as she defended herself against three assailants. "You will not take me again," she screamed, her voice cutting through the chaos. One traitor fell to her blade, but another grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the smoke where hidden horses waited. "Nilüfer's will lives on. You will be leverage for the Pope's victory." Orhan saw the danger first. With a roar that shook the heavens, he broke from his riders and charged through the flames, his sword intercepting the traitors in a whirlwind of steel. "Release her, you dogs of betrayal," he cut down two in rapid succession, his body a shield as arrows whistled past. Asporcha broke free, standing back to back with him as the last assailant lunged. Their blades met his together, ending the threat in a spray of blood that mixed with the rising smoke. "Thank you, Orhan," she gasped, breathing heavily, "not just for me, for all of us." But even as that threat was ended, the greater storm revealed its final face. From the western mouth of the pass, the Pope's true elite force emerged, fresh troops who had landed that very night, their armor untouched by previous battles, their priests chanting loudly as they marched under a massive black cross that seemed to drink in the firelight. At their head rode the Pope's own legate, a figure of cold authority whose voice carried across the battlefield like a curse. "In the name of the Holy Father, this land will be cleansed. The House of Osman ends tonight." Orhan turned to face this new wave, his captains rallying around him, Orhan bloodied but fierce, Dursun with arrows still flying from the ridges, Orhan Faladios returning from his duel like an avenging spirit, and Asporcha standing tall beside her husband, sword raised. The final cataclysmic clash began. The two forces collided with the force of colliding mountains. Steel met steel in a deafening roar that drowned out even the thunder above. Flames consumed entire sections of the pass as siege equipment burned uncontrollably. Smoke became so thick that men fought by sound and instinct alone, calling out the names of their brothers to avoid killing their own in the blindness. In this ultimate crucible, Orhan met the papal legate in single combat upon a ridge overlooking the madness below. Their horses met with thunderous impact. Blades crashed together with such force that sparks lit the smoke around them like stars being born in hell. "Your reign of heresy ends here," the legate proclaimed, his voice filled with holy rage. Orhan answered with calm, unyielding power. "You bring war in the name of God, yet know nothing of true faith. This land belongs to those who walk the straight path. Your cross has already failed." Their duel was fierce and masterful, each man a titan of his cause. The legate fought with the accumulated zeal of a lifetime of crusades. Orhan fought with the love of his family, the honor of his house, and the prayers of an entire people. Steel sang, horses reared. The ridge itself seemed to tremble as fire spread below them and arrows continued to rain from Dursun's position. With a final, powerful series of strikes born from every trial he had endured, Orhan disarmed the legate and brought him to his knees upon the bloodied stone. "Mercy," the man gasped, looking up with fear in his eyes for the first time. Orhan stood over him, chest heaving. Mercy is granted to those who seek redemption. You sought only destruction, your fate is written. As the grand host finally broke and began a chaotic retreat into the night, victory seemed at hand. Cheers began to rise from the Osman ranks, but then from the direction of Bursa, a lone, bloodied rider emerged through the smoke at full gallop, collapsing at Orhan's feet. Orhan Sahib, the final betrayal, the traitors inside the citadel have opened the main gates. The Pope's personal guard is already inside the city. They hold the central mosque, and they have taken Qasim and Suleiman hostage, demanding your surrender and the execution of Asporça as a witch who brought division. Orhan's face transformed into a mask of thunderous fury and profound pain as fresh fires bloomed on the horizon where Bursa lay. Asporça's hand found his, squeezing tightly. Turhan, Dursun, and Burhan Faladios turned to him, waiting for the command that would decide everything. The night had never been darker. Smoke choked the pass, the wounded cried out, and in the distance the lights of a city under siege burned like a funeral pyre for the realm itself. Orhan raised his sword once more, his voice rising like a prayer and a roar combined. Then we ride for home, no rest, no mercy. We end this tonight or we die trying, for the faith, for our children, for everything we have bled to protect. The surviving warriors turned as one, exhausted beyond measure, yet driven by a fire no enemy could extinguish. As the final, apocalyptic march toward Bursa began beneath a sky that seemed to weep blood and fire, the epic struggle for the soul of the realm hurtling toward its ultimate, merciless conclusion. As the blood moon bled its final light across the devastated pass of Demia, Orhan Sahib spurred his warhorse forward with a fury that seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth, his voice rising like thunder rolling through the mountains. Ride, ride for Bursa, ride for our children, ride for everything we have bled, suffered, and prayed for, no rest, no mercy for the traitors who have opened our sacred gates to the enemy. The surviving Osman host, bloodied, exhausted beyond mortal limits, yet bound together by unbreakable faith and iron will, turned as one and began the desperate night march westward. Hooves thundered across the scorched plain, carrying warriors who had not slept in days, whose wounds wept openly beneath torn armor, yet whose eyes burned with a fire no darkness could extinguish. Behind them, the shattered remnants of the Pope's grand host lay in ruins, their crosses broken, their siege engines reduced to smoldering skeletons, their priests silent at last. But ahead, the true heart of the realm bled. Smoke from 1,000 fires stained the night sky as the column pushed forward without pause. Turhan rode at the vanguard, his elite riders forming a spear of vengeance cutting through the darkness. We will reach the gates before they can consolidate, he shouted back, his voice hoarse but unyielding. Every traitor who opened our walls will taste my steel. Dursun galloped beside him, the bruises around his throat from the forest long ago now joined by fresh wounds, yet his resolve had never been stronger. I lost one brother to betrayal, I will not lose the future of this house. The Karasi ride with death itself tonight. Burhan Faladios brought up the rear with the main strength, his sword never leaving his hand, his eyes scanning every shadow for ambush. Asporça rode in the command group beside Orhan, her face streaked with soot and dried blood, yet her posture remained that of a queen forged in fire. Our sons are in danger, she said, voice steady despite the terror gripping her heart. We will tear down every wall and every traitor between us and them. The ride became a fevered nightmare. Horses stumbled from exhaustion but were driven forward by the sheer will of their riders. Messengers met them on the road with ever graver tidings. The traitorous captains had seized the central citadel and the great mosque, holding Qasim and Suleiman as hostages upon the highest minaret. The Pope's personal guard, elite knights in black armor bearing golden crosses, now occupied key positions within the city walls, their torches visible from miles away like the eyes of demons. Fires burned in the outer districts where loyal citizens fought desperate skirmishes against the invaders. The realm's heart had been pierced, and it bled profusely. As the first grey light of false dawn touched the horizon, the walls of Bursa rose before them like the bones of a wounded giant. Flames licked at several towers. The great gate stood partially open, guarded by traitors who flew both the crescent and the cross in blasphemous union. Orhan reined in his horse before the city, his voice carrying across the host like the judgment of the ages. This is not merely our city. This is the beating heart of our faith in these lands. We do not storm it as conquerors. We reclaim it as fathers, as brothers, as guardians of everything holy. Turhan, take your riders and secure the outer walls, prevent any escape. Dursun, lead your Karasi through the eastern passages, clear the traitors from the rooftops. Burhan Faladios, you will fight beside me into the central citadel. Asporça, stay close, your courage will be needed when we reach our sons. The assault upon Bursa began with holy fury. Turhan's riders crashed through the partially open gates like a storm of righteous wrath, steel flashing as they cut down the surprised traitors who had expected Orhan to still be days away. Arrows rained from the walls as loyal archers who had held hidden positions revealed themselves, joining the fight. Flames spread through the outer quarters where desperate street fighting erupted between citizens and invaders. Smoke billowed through narrow alleys, turning the familiar streets of home into a labyrinth of fire and shadow. Orhan led the central thrust toward the great mosque and citadel, Orhan Faladios at his right like an angel of death. They fought through the grand square where fountains once sang peacefully, now running red. For the house of Osman, Orhan roared as he carved a path through a line of papal knights, his blade claiming 3 lives in as many heartbeats. The clash was brutal and intimate, fought in the very streets where children had once played. Steel rang against stone, men died calling upon their gods. Fires consumed merchant stalls and sacred arches alike, as chaos consumed the city. In the heart of the great mosque's inner courtyard, Orhan finally came face to face with the leader of the traitors, Captain Zahir, the same man he had disarmed at Aksu, now risen again through sheer hatred. "You should have died on the field," Zahir screamed as their blades met once more amid the smoke drifting through the sacred space. "Your weakness brought this upon us," Asporça divided the house, Nilüfer spoke truth. Their duel became the soul of the battle, steel crashing with apocalyptic force beneath the high dome where prayers had once risen pure. Zahir fought with the madness of a man who had sold everything. Orhan fought with the love of a father whose children were held above in chains. "You opened our gates to the enemy," Orhan thundered, parrying a vicious overhead strike. "You threaten my sons, your betrayal ends here." Sparks exploded as their blades locked. The two men twisted and lunged, their horses long abandoned, fighting on foot amid fallen banners and dying men. With a final, powerful series of strikes born from every pain the realm had suffered, Orhan disarmed Zahir and drove him to his knees. But before the killing blow could fall, a scream echoed from above. The traitors had dragged Qasim and Suleiman onto the highest balcony of the minaret, blades held to their throats. "Surrender, Orhan Saheb," one shouted. "Release Nilüfer and bow to the cross, or watch your bloodline die before your eyes." Asporça's cry of anguish cut through the chaos. Tarhan and Dursun fought their way toward the base of the minaret, but papal knights blocked their path. Orhan Faladios roared in fury as he tried to break through. Orhan stood frozen for one terrible heartbeat, looking up at his sons' terrified yet brave faces. At that exact moment, a new thunder rolled from the western gates. The Pope's personal legion had fully entered the city, their black cross banners raised high as they marched toward the central mosque to deliver the final blow. Smoke choked the sacred space, flames climbed the walls of the mosque, the cries of the dying mixed with desperate prayers, and high above, the blades pressed closer to the throats of the young princes as the ultimate test of faith, honor, and a father's love reached its shattering climax. Orhan raised his sword toward the balcony, his voice breaking through the roar of battle like a final oath sworn before the heavens themselves. "Hold, my sons, your father comes, the realm will not fall this night." The final, merciless storm had arrived at the very heart of Bursa, and in its raging core, the destiny of empires, families, and an entire faith hung suspended by the thinnest, most fragile thread of steel, prayer, and unyielding will. The night had become eternal, and the war refused to end until every last betrayal was answered and every prayer tested in the fires of judgment. As the final veil of night clung desperately to the spires of Bursa like a shroud unwilling to release the dying, Orhan Saheb charged forward through the smoke-filled courtyard of the great mosque, his boots pounding across sacred stone now slick with blood and littered with fallen banners. Flames climbed the ancient walls like hungry demons, casting flickering hellish light across the high dome where prayers had once ascended pure and unbroken. The air was thick enough to choke the soul itself, smoke from burning tapestries, the metallic reek of fresh blood, and the desperate cries of men calling upon Allah and the cross in the same gasping breaths. High above on the narrow balcony of the minaret, young Qasim and Suleiman stood with blades pressed against their small throats, their faces pale yet defiant, eyes searching desperately for their father in the chaos below. "Hold, my sons," Orhan roared, his voice cutting through the roar of battle like a blade through silk. "Your father comes, do not fear, faith will shield you." The traitor holding Qasim laughed bitterly, pressing the edge deeper. "Surrender, Orhan Saheb, release Nilüfer and bow before the Holy Father's legions, or watch your bloodline spill upon these stones." Asporça fought beside him like a storm unleashed, her sword flashing as she cut down 2 papal guards who tried to block their path. "You will not touch them," she screamed, her voice raw with a mother's fury. Tarhan and Burhan Faladios carved a bloody path on the left flank, their blades singing a song of vengeance as they cleared the steps leading upward. Dursun led a group of Karasi warriors up the outer staircase, arrows nocked even in the tight confines, ready to loose at any who dared harm the princes. The climb to the minaret became a vertical battlefield of pure savagery. Orhan fought step by step, his sword a whirlwind of righteous wrath. A papal knight in black armor lunged at him from a landing, their blades met with thunderous force. "Your house ends tonight," the knight snarled. Orhan twisted, parried, and drove his sword through the man's chest with a single powerful thrust. This house was built by faith, not fear, he growled, kicking the dying man aside. Smoke poured up the narrow stairwell, blinding and choking, while flames from below licked at the wooden supports, threatening to bring the entire structure crashing down. Higher up, the lead traitor, Captain Zahir, his face twisted with madness and defeat, shoved young Qasim closer to the edge. See, Orhan, this is what your weakness has wrought. Asporça divided us. The cross offers order. Surrender now. Suleiman, though small, spat defiance. Our father will never bow. Allah is with us. The boy's courage brought tears to Orhan's eyes even as he fought onward. Orhan Faladios reached the balcony first, slamming into Zahir's remaining guards like a battering ram. His sword moved with lethal precision, ending 2 lives in the space of heartbeats. You dare threaten the sons of Osman, he bellowed. Orhan arrived moments later, intercepting an arrow meant for Dursun and driving his blade into another traitor's side. The Karasi are here, the city rises with us. Orhan finally burst onto the balcony, his chest heaving, blood streaming from a cut across his forehead. Zahir held both boys, now one in each arm, blades at their necks. The 2 men locked eyes across the narrow space, the minaret swaying slightly as flames consumed the lower levels. It did not have to come to this, Zahir, Orhan said, voice low and heavy with sorrow. You were once my brother in arms, now you stand with the cross against your own people. Zahir's laugh was broken. You brought an outsider into the heart of power. Nilüfer warned us. The realm fractures because of her, because of you. The final duel upon the burning minaret was fierce and deeply personal. Zahir released the boys into the hands of his last guard and charged. Their blades met with apocalyptic force, steel screaming against steel as the structure groaned beneath them. Sparks flew into the smoke-filled night. Orhan fought with the love of a father, the duty of a ruler, and the faith of a man who had walked through every trial fate could devise. Zahir fought with the desperation of a soul that had sold everything and now sought only destruction. They circled on the narrow balcony, the drop below filled with fire and chaos. Blades flashed, bodies twisted. A powerful strike from Zahir grazed Orhan's side, drawing fresh blood. Orhan answered with a thunderous counter that shattered Zahir's guard and sent the traitor staggering back against the railing. With one final, mercifully swift strike, Orhan disarmed him completely. Zahir fell to his knees, gasping. Finish it then, end me. Orhan stood over him, sword raised. Justice is not mine alone, but you will face it. He kicked Zahir's blade away and turned to his sons, pulling Qasim and Suleiman into his arms with fierce protectiveness. The boys clung to him, sobbing. Asporça reached them moments later, embracing all 3 as tears cut clean paths through the soot on her face. My sons, my brave sons. But the victory was cruelly short. From below, a great roar rose as the Pope's personal legion poured into the central square, their black banners raised high. Siege towers rolled forward through the burning streets and fresh waves of knights stormed the mosque compound. The city was not yet saved. The traitors inside the citadel still held parts of the palace, and distant horns signaled even more enemy reinforcements arriving from the western gates. Orhan lifted his sons onto his shoulders, his voice rising above the renewed chaos. We have reclaimed our blood, but not yet our home. Orhan, secure the outer mosque. Dursun, clear the minaret stairs. Orhan, with me to the citadel. Asporça, take the boys to safety with Malhun Khartoum. As they descended the burning minaret, the structure began to sway dangerously. Flames roared higher. The Pope's legate could be seen in the square below, raising a golden cross and calling for the final assault. In the name of the Holy See, take the city. Leave no survivor of the false house. The night had become a living hell. Smoke swallowed entire districts. Loyal citizens fought alongside Orhan's warriors in the streets. The great mosque itself groaned as its supports burned, and in the distance the central citadel still flew the blasphemous banner of cross and crescent combined. Orhan emerged from the minaret with his family protected, only to find a new wave of elite papal knights charging directly toward them. Orhan and Burhan formed a shield wall, Dursun losing his final arrows. Asporça stood with sword drawn, ready to fight to the death beside her husband. In that moment, as fresh flames erupted across the palace walls and the legate's voice called for total annihilation, a lone rider broke through the outer lines bearing one final, shattering message. Orhan Sahib, the Pope has brought the ultimate weapon, Greek fire ships on the river, and they prepare to burn the entire city if you do not surrender by dawn. Orhan looked up at the burning sky, his sons in his arms, his wife and captains surrounding him, as the greatest storm the realm had ever known reached its terrifying crescendo. The final hours had come. Victory or annihilation waited in the balance, and the fate of everything they had fought for hung by the thinnest thread of faith, steel, and a father's unyielding love. The drums of the final stand beat louder than ever, echoing through the flames and smoke as dawn approached like the blade of destiny itself. The war for the soul of the realm had reached its absolute end, and no soul within Bursa would leave this night unchanged. As the first pale fingers of dawn clawed at the smoke-choked sky over Bursa, painting the minarets in hues of blood and fire, Orhan Sahib descended the burning staircase of the great mosque with his sons clutched tightly against his chest, their small hearts pounding like war drums against his armored frame. The structure groaned and shuddered around them, ancient timbers cracking as flames devoured the lower levels with merciless hunger. Smoke poured upward in thick, choking waves, turning the sacred ascent into a corridor of hell itself. Asporça fought at his side, her sword red with the blood of traitors, her eyes fierce with a mother's unyielding protection. "Stay close to me, my loves," she whispered to the boys between gasping breaths. "Your father will not let the darkness take us." Behind them, Turhan and Burhan Faladios formed a rearguard of living steel, their blades flashing as they cut down the last papal knights who tried to pursue. Dursun loosed arrow after arrow from the narrow windows, each shaft finding its mark in the chaos below. "The minaret will not hold much longer," Dursun shouted. "We must reach the citadel before the flames consume everything." They burst into the grand courtyard just as the structure above began to collapse in a deafening roar of stone and fire. Sparks rained down like judgment from the heavens. The Pope's legate stood in the center of the square, his golden cross raised high, surrounded by hundreds of fresh black-armored knights who had poured through the opened gates. His voice carried across the inferno like a curse wrapped in prayer. "In the name of the Holy Father, this city of heresy will burn. Surrender the false ruler and his witch wife, or every soul within these walls will feed the flames." Orhan set his sons down behind a protective wall of loyal warriors and stepped forward, sword raised, his presence alone steadying the desperate defense. "You bring fire and betrayal to these sacred streets," he called out, voice deep and resonant, carrying the weight of every oath sworn and every trial endured. "You ally with traitors who opened our own gates, but this house was built upon faith, not fear. Leave these lands, or Allah's justice will consume you, as it has consumed all who came before." The legate's laughter was cold and hollow. "Your Allah cannot save you now. Greek fire burns upon the river. By dawn this city will be ash unless you kneel." At his signal, the elite papal guard charged. The final battle for the heart of Bursa erupted with apocalyptic fury. Steel met steel in the grand square with a sound like the breaking of the world. Flames from the collapsing minaret spread rapidly to nearby buildings, turning the night into a blazing day of judgment. Smoke rolled so thick that men fought by sound and instinct, calling out the names of brothers to avoid killing their own. Turhan led a devastating countercharge on the left, his riders smashing into the enemy flank like divine thunder. "For Orhan Sahib, for the faith that never bends." He roared, his sword claiming life after life. Burhan Faladios became a whirlwind of death in the center, his blade singing through armor and bone as he met the legate's personal champions. "Your cross has brought only ruin," he bellowed, disarming one knight and sending him crashing into the flames. Dursun climbed to a half-burned balcony and poured arrows into the advancing ranks, each shot precise and merciless. "This is for my brother's soul," he cried. "This is for every betrayal we have endured." Asporça fought beside Orhan with ferocious grace, her sword moving in deadly arcs as she protected their sons with her life. "You will not take them," she shouted at a group of knights who tried to break through. "Not while I draw breath." Orhan carved a path straight toward the legate, every strike fueled by the love of his family and the honor of his realm. A massive papal knight blocked his way, their blades crashed together with earth-shaking force. "Your time is finished," Orhan growled, twisting free and driving his sword through the man's guard. Another attacker came from the side. Orhan spun, parried, and ended him with a powerful overhead strike. Smoke blinded him, flames licked at his cloak, yet he pressed forward, unyielding. Finally, he stood before the legate himself. The two leaders faced each other amid the burning square, the fate of the city hanging between them. "Kneel, barbarian," the legate hissed, raising his ornate sword. "Submit to the true faith and spare your people." Orhan's eyes burned with holy fire. "The only submission I know is to Allah. Your cross has no power here." Their duel became the soul of the storm. Blades met with apocalyptic power, sparks exploded into the smoke. The legate fought with cold, calculated zeal honed by years of holy war. Orhan fought with the accumulated pain, love, and faith of a man who had carried an entire realm upon his shoulders. Steel sang, bodies twisted. The ground trembled as nearby buildings collapsed in showers of flame and debris. With a final thunderous series of strikes, Orhan disarmed the legate and brought him to his knees. The man looked up, fear breaking through his fanaticism for the first time. "Mercy," he whispered. Orhan stood over him, chest heaving. "Mercy was offered many times, you chose fire instead." He raised his sword for the final blow. But before it fell, a great cry rose from the western gates. The Greek fire ships had reached the riverbank. Massive jets of liquid flame arched through the night, setting entire districts ablaze in seconds. The city itself began to burn in earnest. Traitors still holding parts of the citadel cheered, believing their victory at hand. Loyal citizens screamed as flames consumed their homes. The final hour had truly arrived. Orhan turned, gathering his family and captains close. "We fight to the last stone if we must. Turhan, secure the river approach. Dursun, take the boys to the inner keep with Malhun Khatun. Orhan, with me to the citadel walls. Asporça, stay with me. We end this together. As the Greek fire roared across the river and the Pope's legions pressed harder into the burning city, Orhan raised his sword one last time toward the flaming heavens. Allah, grant us strength for this final stand. Let justice prevail though the world itself burns. The night had become eternal fire. The realm stood on the edge of annihilation. And in the heart of the inferno, Orhan Saheb, his family, and his most loyal warriors prepared for the last, bloodiest chapter of a war that had tested every oath, every prayer, and every bond of honor forged in the crucible of fate. The drums of the final defense beat louder than the roar of flames, as dawn approached like the sword of destiny itself, ready to decide once and for all whether the House of Osman would rise from the ashes or be consumed forever in the fires of betrayal and holy war. As the false dawn bled across the smoke-choked heavens like the final judgment of the ages, Bursa burned with a fury that seemed to consume both earth and sky. Greek fire roared across the river in great arcs of liquid hell, setting entire quarters ablaze in seconds, turning ancient streets into rivers of flame that devoured homes, mosques, and the cries of the innocent alike. Orhan Saheb charged through this apocalypse with his sword raised high, his voice a thunderous roar that cut through the roar of collapsing buildings and the screams of dying men. Hold the line, sons of the faith, for every prayer that has risen from these minarets, for our children, for the soul of this realm that will not die this night. The central square had become a slaughterhouse of fire and steel. Papal knights in blackened armor pressed forward under the legate's golden cross, their fanatical chants clashing against the defiant cries of Allahu Akbar from Orhan's warriors. Flames leaped from rooftop to rooftop, consuming the wooden galleries and sacred arches, while thick black smoke rolled through the narrow alleys like the breath of Shaitan himself. Loyal citizens fought beside professional soldiers, armed with whatever they could find, kitchen knives, broken spears, stones from the streets, defending their homes with the desperation of those who knew no other life. Orhan led a suicidal charge toward the riverbank, his remaining elite riders galloping through walls of flame. Burn their ships, he bellowed, voice raw. Deny them the Greek fire. Arrows whistled past him as papal crossbowmen fired from the banks. One of his riders fell screaming as liquid fire engulfed horse and man in a single horrifying instant. Yet Orhan pressed on, reaching the first vessel and hurling torches onto its deck. Explosions of Greek fire lit the night in blinding white-orange fury as the ship erupted, sending flaming debris raining across the water and setting two more vessels ablaze. For Orhan Saheb, he roared as his men fought like demons on the burning decks. In the heart of the great mosque compound, Orhan Faladios became a living storm of vengeance. His blade moved with terrifying speed, cutting down wave after wave of the Pope's personal guard. You dare bring this fire to our holy city, he thundered, disarming one knight and driving his sword through the next. Your cross will be your funeral shroud. The legate himself watched from a distance, face twisted in rage, as his elite forces crumbled against the unyielding will of men who fought for home and faith. Orhan pushed toward the citadel with Asporça at his side, their swords moving in deadly harmony. Our sons are in there, she said between strikes, her voice steady despite the tears cutting paths through the soot on her face. We will tear down every stone if we must. A group of traitorous captains blocked their path, their eyes filled with the madness of cornered men. You brought this upon us, one screamed, charging. Orhan met him with a powerful overhead strike that shattered his defense. No, he replied coldly as the man fell, you opened the gates to it. Asporça fought beside him with ferocious grace, her blade claiming the life of another who had once sworn loyalty to the house. Your ambition ends tonight, she whispered as the traitor collapsed. High in the citadel's inner tower, young Qasim and Suleiman stood guarded by the last of Zahir's men, blades still hovering near their throats. Malhun Khatun stood protectively before them, her voice trembling yet strong. You will answer to Allah for this blasphemy, touch them and your souls are damned forever. The boys, though terrified, held their heads high. Our father will come, Qasim said firmly. He always comes. Dursun reached the tower stairs first, leading a desperate charge of Karasi warriors. Arrows flew in the confined space, ending lives with deadly precision. For the blood we have lost, he roared, his voice breaking with the memory of Damia. For the future we will protect, he fought up the spiral staircase like a man possessed, blade and bow working in deadly tandem until he burst into the chamber where the princes were held. The final guards fell before his fury. Dursun dropped to his knees before the boys, pulling them into a fierce embrace. You are safe, your father comes, the realm holds because of your courage. Outside, Orhan and Asporça finally broke through to the citadel gates. The legate himself rode forward with his remaining elite, the golden cross gleaming obscenely against the flames. This ends now, false king, he shouted. Orhan stepped forward alone, sword raised. Then let it end between us. No more innocents need die for your holy war. The two leaders charged. Their duel upon the burning steps of the citadel became the final heartbeat of the night. Blades crashed with apocalyptic force. The legate fought with cold, calculated hatred. Orhan fought with the love of a father, the duty of a ruler, and the faith of an entire people. Steel sang. Sparks illuminated their faces. The legate landed a deep cut across Orhan's shoulder, drawing fresh blood. Orhan answered with a thunderous counter that shattered the man's guard and sent him crashing to the stone steps. As the legate lay defeated, gasping for breath, the remaining papal forces began to waver. Many threw down their weapons, realizing the city would not fall easily. Yet from the river came fresh horror. The Greek fire ships had repositioned, preparing one final, devastating barrage that would turn the entire heart of Bursa into an inferno. Orhan stood over the fallen legate, sword raised for the killing blow, when a great cry rose from the western walls. Fresh reinforcements, loyal captains who had been delayed by earlier skirmishes, poured through a hidden gate, slamming into the enemy rear. The tide had turned. But in the distance, the Greek fire ships prepared to unleash their final volley. Orhan looked toward the river, then back at his family, Asporça holding their sons, Turhan and Dursun rallying the warriors, Burhan Faladios standing guard. The city burned, the realm trembled, and the final dawn approached like the sword of fate itself. "Take the legate alive," Orhan commanded, lowering his sword. "We will use him to end this madness. All forces to the river walls. We stop those ships or we die trying." The night had reached its absolute limit. Flames consumed the horizon. The cries of the wounded filled the air. And as the first true light of morning touched the burning minarets, the final, most desperate battle for the soul of Bursa and the future of an entire people began in earnest. The war had come home, and it would not leave until every last ember of betrayal was extinguished in blood, fire, and unyielding faith. As the first true light of dawn clawed its way through the choking veil of smoke and flame that had swallowed Bursa whole, Orhan Saheb stood upon the blood-slick steps of the burning citadel, his sword still raised high like a banner of defiance against the very heavens themselves. The city he had sworn to protect was now a living inferno. Greek fire roared across the river in great, unstoppable arcs of liquid damnation, turning entire districts into seas of unquenchable flame. Ancient wooden halls collapsed with thunderous roars, sending pillars of sparks spiraling into the blood-red sky. The air itself had become a poison, thick with the stench of charred flesh, melting stone, and the desperate screams of those trapped between loyalty and annihilation. "Hold the river walls," Orhan roared, his voice a broken yet unbreakable thunder that cut through the apocalypse. "Turhan, take every rider still breathing and stop those ships. Burn them before they reduce our home to ash." Turhan, his face blackened by soot and streaked with blood, saluted with a bloodied fist. "As you command, Orhan Saheb, they will not pass while I live." He wheeled his horse and charged toward the river with the last of his elite riders, a desperate spear of vengeance galloping straight into the jaws of hell. Arrows whistled after them from papal positions along the banks, but Turhan rode as if death itself feared to claim him. In the grand square, Burhan Faladios fought like a man who had become the wrath of Allah made flesh. His sword moved in wide, devastating arcs, cleaving through the black-armored papal knights who tried to reinforce the legate's fallen position. "You brought fire to our city," he bellowed, his voice raw and terrible. "Now taste the fire you worship." A massive knight in ornate plate charged him. Their clash was cataclysmic, steel ringing against steel with such force that sparks lit the smoke like dying stars. Burhan fainted low, then rose with a strike that shattered the knight's helm and sent him crashing lifeless into the flames, consuming a nearby market stall. Dursun had reached the inner keep with the young princes, shielding Qasim and Suleiman with his own body as loyal guards formed a final circle around them. Malhan Khatun stood tall beside them, her voice steady despite the terror. "Your father fights for you. Stand brave, my grandsons. The blood of Osman does not kneel." Qasim, though trembling, gripped a small dagger. "We will not hide while he bleeds." Suleiman nodded, tears cutting clean lines through the soot on his face. "Tell him we are not afraid." Asporça fought at Orhan's right hand like a queen of war, her sword moving with lethal grace as she defended the path toward the river walls. "They will not take our home," she cried, cutting down a traitor who tried to strike at Orhan's back. "Not while we still draw breath." Orhan glanced at her, their eyes meeting for one fleeting moment amid the chaos, a look that carried years of love, pain, division, and unbreakable unity. "Stay close to me," he said, voice low yet fierce. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The battle for the river became the soul of the final stand. Turhan's riders reached the banks just as the Greek fire ships prepared their deadliest barrage. Flaming projectiles arched high into the sky, trailing liquid death. Turhan spurred his horse straight onto the nearest vessel, leaping from the saddle onto its burning deck. "For Bursa," he screamed, driving his sword into the first enemy sailor he saw. His men followed, fighting hand-to-hand upon the decks as flames consumed the ships from within. One vessel exploded in a cataclysmic blast that lit the entire river in blinding white fury, sending burning debris crashing into the city walls. Turhan fought on, bloodied and singed, refusing to yield even as the ship beneath him began to sink in flames. From the citadel's highest tower, the remaining traitors watched with growing horror. Their leader, a captain who had once sworn loyalty to Orhan, turned to his men. "We are finished. The city burns because of us." Some threw down their weapons and begged for mercy. Others, driven mad by defeat, charged down to join the papal remnants in one final, suicidal assault. Orhan met them in the grand courtyard, his sword a blur of righteous judgment. The clash was intimate and merciless. Steel screamed against steel, men died with prayers and curses on their lips. Orhan Faladios joined him, their combined fury carving a path of death through the last wave of invaders. "This is for every brother we lost," Orhan roared. "This is for Damir Khan's soul. This is for the future we will protect." As the sun finally broke fully over the burning horizon, the tide turned decisively. The Greek fire ships, ravaged by Orhan's desperate assault, began to sink one by one, their deadly cargo exploding harmlessly in the river. The papal legions, seeing their greatest weapon neutralized and their legate defeated, began a chaotic retreat toward the western gates. Cheers, hoarse and broken, rose from the surviving defenders as they pursued the enemy through the flames. Orhan stood in the center of the ruined square, surrounded by his captains and family. Asporça embraced their sons tightly as Malhun Khartoum wept with relief. Dursun knelt before them, head bowed. Orhan returned from the river, burned and bleeding but alive, dropping to one knee before his commander. Orhan Faladios planted his sword in the ground, breathing heavily as he surveyed the burning city. The legate, bound and on his knees, looked up at Orhan with defeated eyes. You have won nothing. Mori will come. The cross never forgets." Orhan looked down at him, then across the burning ruins of his beloved city. Smoke still rose in colossal pillars. Bodies lay scattered like fallen leaves. The great mosque stood damaged but defiant. His voice, when it came, was quiet yet carried the weight of destiny. "We have won today. Tomorrow we will rebuild, stronger, wiser, united. Take this legate alive. He will carry our message back to his pope. The house of Osman does not kneel, it rises from the ashes." Yet even as the first rays of true morning touched the minarets and the surviving citizens began to emerge from hiding to help extinguish the flames, a final scout rode into the square, his horse collapsing beneath him. The man crawled forward, gasping his final words before losing consciousness. Orhan Saheb from the north, a new alliance forms. Surviving emirs, remnants of Damir Khan's old followers, and whispers that Nilüfer has escaped her chains during the chaos, they march even now, seeking to strike while we are at our weakest. Orhan closed his eyes for a long moment, the weight of endless war pressing upon his shoulders like the hand of fate itself. Asporça stepped closer, placing her hand upon his bloodied arm. Their sons looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. Turhan, Dursun and Burhan waited in silence, ready for whatever command would come next. The night of fire had ended, but the war for the soul of the realm had not. Orhan opened his eyes, gazing toward the northern horizon where new storms gathered. His voice, when it finally came, carried the unyielding will of a man who had walked through hell and refused to break. "Then we prepare once more, gather every loyal soul, tend the wounded, bury the dead with honor, and when the next darkness comes we will meet it together, as one house, as one faith, as one people." The wind shifted across the burning city, carrying away the smoke and the echoes of battle, as the survivors began the long, painful work of reclaiming their home from the ashes. Yet in the distance, new fires kindled on the horizon and the drums of war, though faint, began their slow, inevitable rhythm once again. The epic struggle continued. Honor had been tested, betrayal had been answered, but the final chapter of this great tale still waited to be written in blood, fire, faith, and the unyielding will of those who refused to let their world fall into darkness.